allegiance.
Just a quick minute.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's planning board meeting. Please be aware of the fire exit, which is to your left of this room. In the event of an emergency, please move in a calm and orderly fashion down the stairs and please do not use the elevator. The meetings are recorded by the secretary for the purpose of a record and minutes, so please identify yourself each time to come to the podium and speak into the microphone. The board will follow the items in the order that they appear on the agenda, extra copies of which are near the door. After the case has been called, the applicant and or their representative shall come to the podium, identify him or herself, give his or her address, and present their case. The planning board members will then have an opportunity to question the applicant. If this case is a public hearing, it will be open for public input, at which time anyone wishing to speak in regards to this application may do so. Please, by coming to the podium, identifying themselves along with their address, and directing any questions to the board. Once all public input has been completed, the applicant or site representative will be given the opportunity to respond to any public input. Once all public input has been completed and all questions have been satisfied, the case will be closed to public input and the board will then move on to a decision. No further input will be allowed at that point. Michelle, if you will, introduce our first matter before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on the agenda this evening is case number PB 1604-1. Upon the matter of request by Natalie Best for signage approval to install a 12-foot by 2-foot externally lit sign on premises 653 Titus Avenue in a mixed-use commercial district.
Is there anyone from the applicant here tonight?
I don't see the applicant here. I know that she was at workshop. So I'm not sure what,
Can we review it? I've never had anyone not show up in
we-
9.5 years.
I know. And I don't,
I've never
You
had.
told her she could go when you.
well, we made the
Well,
comment
she was
about
able to
that it
go
was.
that night.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if there might have been some misunderstanding on her part, that she thought it was reviewed and ready to go
I think so.
from
We
the
review
workshop.
it in absentia. Do they have to be here in their regard?
I don't know that they have to be here.
They don't.
We're not going to do it, okay.
They don't need to be here. What we may want to do is we may want to go through the other cases on the agenda and leave this one till the end, and then the board could discuss whether or not you want to take up the application or
I like that
table it.
advice. All right, if you introduce the next matter before us.
Okay, next case on the agenda, PB 1604-2. Upon the matter of request by Christopher Brett with permission from the town of Arundequoit for subdivision approval to subdivide a portion of town-owned land, tax ID number 092.08-1-27.11, across from 1336 Bayshore Boulevard to create a 50-foot by 100-foot building lot in an R1 residential district.
Is the applicant for this? Yep. Oh, there he is.
Hi, I'm Christopher Brett. I live at 1336 Bayshore Boulevard.
What the usual course of events is, being that, is you would introduce us a little bit about the matter before us, so just tell us what you're looking to do.
Sure. I want to subdivide a portion of the town-owned land to create a 50 by 100-foot building lot to construct a garage across from my house at Bayshore, at 1336 Bayshore Boulevard. I went in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals and had all the variances taken care of, and it was approved by them. So that's where I'm at, basically. And I guess the reason being is where I live on Bayshore Boulevard, there's only about 8 feet from the gutter's edge to a steep cliff that runs the entire width of my property. So I've always had to park parallel to the road. And it's kind of hairy on Bay Shore Boulevard. They come down a hill, the cars come down a hill and they gather speed, and sometimes they're coming around a bend by my house at 60 plus miles per hour. So I've always been fearful of that. Also, this past summer, Monroe County put in a new water main along Bay Shore Boulevard, and they placed a fire hydrant right on my properties. And basically, because I park parallel to the road, I can't pull in perpendicular, being that I have to park parallel, I only have 2 parking spots. When they put the fire hydrant in, I was reduced to 1 parking spot. In the past, I've used the parking across the street of the town-owned land. I received a letter from the town that we are no longer able to park over there because it is the town's right-of-way. So thusly, I have 1 parking spot. And the placement of the fire hydrant I was not happy with. I opened a case about it. They did not want to move it. They moved one down the street for one of the other neighbors. They moved it prior to putting the hydrant in, though. It was relocated before. I never knew the fire hydrant was going where it was. I just showed up one day and it was already in. So I met a couple times with them, and finally I came down to Pat, the commissioner of Highway Department, came down, and we met with one of the engineers from the Monroe County Water Authority about moving the fire hydrant. And that's how this all came about, that if I was able to purchase some land and put up a garage and be able to pull in perpendicular to the road and feel safe and whatnot, that I wouldn't pursue moving this fire hydrant or anything like that. So basically, that's how this all came about. And again, I've had my approvals from the zoning board to construct the garage. All my neighbors are in favor of it. They're all signed off on a document I can pass around if you'd like. And so that's where I'm at. This is the next process in this event. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Alan, any questions of the applicant? Mary?
I have a couple, please. What were the variances for?
They were to construct a garage on a non-conforming building lot. So the town dictated to me what size lot they wanted me to purchase from them. They did not want it big enough to construct a house on it, so they would not have to worry about me putting a house on it, which I didn't want to do anyways. So they kept the lot smaller than allowed for construction of a house and/or garage. So that was one of the variances I got. The other one was maybe because there was not a house on the lot, not have a garage without having a house on the lot. So that was basically the other variance,
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, you received an area variance and a use variance.
Yes.
And what's the typical size of we're talking 2-car, 3-car garage?
It was a 32 by 32 garage.
Help me with the dimensions, Christopher, please. I mean, that means I could
That's
park...
like a 3-car garage?
Okay.
Yes. 3-car garage.
Anything else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kimmy?
I think we addressed this a couple weeks ago, but I just want to revisit. So it looks like in the site plan, your curb cut is 32 feet, but it's not actually going to be the whole width of the garage, is that correct?
No, right. The driveway will be the width of the garage, 32 feet, not the entire width of the lot, which will be 50 feet.
Were we talking a couple weeks ago about lessening that curb cut a little bit and giving it a little more design so we had room for snow removal on either side?
I think there was some comment from the town about the width of the curb cut, I thought it was.
Right.
Can
And
I
I'm not
just
sure-
say something? There is no curb there. It's just a gutter. If that matters, I mean,
I think that the DPW permit would It'd be where they scale back the actual driveway entrance so that you're going to be asked to, at the street edge, pave only a certain width and then fan out to meet the garage, just so it's not continuous access from the whole length down. That would be something that DPW would handle with the applicant.
I think they're asking for going to ask for a narrower throat than the 32 feet width.
And then,
Just the throat and then widen out to the,
Yes.
to the corners of that. I don't have a problem with that. I would like to state, though, that there's other garages on Bay Shore Boulevard where the asphalt and/or concrete driveways run the entire width of the properties. But I would make a concession to narrowing the entrance. I would ideally like to have it 32 feet. However, I would make concessions. But there are other driveways along Bay Shore where the asphalt and concrete driveways run the entire width of the property.
How far back is the garage from the gutter?
It'll be just past the right-of-way, the town's right-of-way, about 30 feet. You know, I'll probably go 32 to be on the safe side.
Well, 32 would give you room to come in and navigate to square up to a garage, would it not?
To wide, oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Richard?
No questions.
Jay?
How are we determining what the price is that we're putting on the lot? Are we getting are we going to get an independent appraisal, or?
Yeah, it was
And-
stated in there that it was appraised.
I had an appraisal done by the town's request from one of their appraisals that they recommended from their appraisal company.
Okay. So what is the town getting for the lot then?
The appraisal was $5,000.
Good answer.
Yeah, I guess I'm all right with this. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me that we're not figuring out how to subdivide that whole property so that we could, if people do want to do it, we do it once and we don't do this. Doing it piecemeal doesn't make sense to me. But I understand you had a problem with the
Hydrant.
fire hydrant, so that's why we're doing it this way. But to me, it seems like it makes more sense to figure out a way to divide it up, and if people want to purchase the ones across from their house, they can do it, and we don't have to go through this rigmarole every time.
If I can comment, the town, Pat wanted me to stay in line with my existing lot across the street.
It has nothing to do with you. This is all about, I don't understand why the town isn't taking action to get this done the right way, which I think is just get it done once and then not have to deal with it
It's
anymore.
not germane to your matter.
It's
but
not germane to your matter.
It's
I'm just
nothing to
saying-
do with,
He's just
Nothing to do
moaning.
with you.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with the town, that it doesn't make sense to me that we're not, you know,
at any rate, yes, we
So-
respect Jay's opinion, and
yeah, not much on
we'll
this.
move on.
I did have one question, if I can.
Yeah.
Are there utilities running to this garage, and where are they being generated from?
Well, I would like to bring in electric, and they'll probably be coming overhead unless RG&E suggests otherwise. I'm not that far along with the project, so that's, I would like to have power there, but, you know, however RG&E determines how I get it, that's up to them.
So currently, the electricity is on your side of the road. It would need to be crossed.
Correct, it's on the, what would be the east side of the road now with, you know, being above on telephone poles.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to open it up to public input. Anyone wishing to speak in regards to this application may do so.
John Kaufman, 249 Hoffman Road. A conservation board made a list of all of the town properties and made recommendations for how they should be disposed of. This particular property is a large piece of land that's very, very much encumbered by APODs, steep slopes, and woodlots. And I sort of wonder how the permission for this subdivision to be given, why did the town want to do this in the first place? In spite of our recommendation, why weren't we advised of that? How is the price determined, and should this not be open to competitive bid?
can't answer the competitive bid, but I do know that it was appraised by an independent appraising agency. I think that there's testimony in the application as to the appraisal process, which we could probably read out.
Oh, look.
And I would just, to address the speaker's comment and the chairman's comment, the process in connection with selling surplus property is governed by New York town law, and that would be a town board action. And I'm looking at Carrie because I'm just going to ask her if the town board's taken action on this yet, or if they're planning to do so.
They have at the April meeting, the town board declared this small portion, subject to the planning board's approval of the subdivision, as surplus land.
I have a
and
paragraph
authorized-
here from the town's letter dated August 13, 2015, to Chris Brett. Procedures for sale by town of town-owned parcels or portions thereof. Says here, when a property owner requests that the town convey a parcel to him or her, the process followed by the town is largely dictated by New York State law and by the town's custom and practice. Pursuant to New York State town law, the town's highway superintendent must first determine that the property consisting of the parcel should be abandoned and request that the town board declare it as surplus. The sale of the property would be subject to a permissive referendum. The town would, of course, have to comply with the requirements of the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act before taking any official action. Should the town go forward with the proposed sale, the town's custom is that the parcel would be conveyed by a quitclaim deed and the subject to any easements, covenants, restrictions of record in which by the town board may wish to impose. The town will require a current appraisal and a survey of this property. It is the town's custom and practice that the cost of those items and any legal fees incurred by the town would have to be borne by the purchaser, together with the cost of any New York real property transfer taxes and recording and filing fees, along with the required legal notice. The purchaser would, pursuant to New York law, be required to pay the fair market value of the land determined by the appraisal and approved by the town board. The closing and appraisal fees could be approximately $2,000 to $2,500. The cost of the parcel is an additional expense borne to the purchaser. If the town conveys this property, the purchaser will need to have the surveyor prepare, at the purchaser's expense, a re-subdivision map for submission to and approval of the town's planning director. A re-sub map of this kind does not require planning board approval, but there is a $50 administrative fee. The purchaser is responsible for filing the approved re-subdivision map with the Monroe County Clerk's Office and paying the fees associated with that filing. Payment of all sums due to the town must be in the form of certified check, bank draft, or bank secretary's check in all cases drawn off of bank's institution or federal credit union having the local branch office made payable to the order of the town. Is that adequate?
I just thought we ought to have been informed that this is going on, given that this was a preservation parcel in our list.
Can I provide a comment?
Sure.
That we did consult the open space, the town-owned open space inventory, because this small piece was located adjacent to the right-of-way and just outside the area that's actually designated as part of the EPOD for steep slopes, that this area, this specific spot on the parcel would not be in any way damaging to the overall remaining portion of the parcel in terms of its role as a corridor for area wildlife and for protecting the slope, so that we felt like this the sale of this small portion wouldn't damage any of those things that the open space inventory identified. And that was the decision of the Public Works Department in concert with other staff in the town.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak in regards to this application may do so now. Seeing none, I will close the public input portion.
Did we get any input from the town engineer on this particular project? The only thing I was concerned about is the fact that we're adding impervious in that area. Do we think there's going to be any kind of negative impact to flooding or anything like that? I know it's a pretty small area, but...
Yeah, we weren't asked to review this, but I did take a look at it, and I don't think the additional runoff is very significant in this case. So I don't think it's going to lead to any additional problems or aggravate any existing situation.
Okay.
Are there any other questions of the applicant by the board?
I guess the only other one I have is, are we going to get some kind of a design of what the driveway's going to look like? There isn't anything on here now. Is it you're going to narrow it? Are we going to specify that today, or how are we going to?
I think we could add that as a stipulation to our findings if we so desire.
The legal limit is 35% of the width of the lot for the throat entrance. So if that was the determining size, and if he wanted to do anything different, he would have to go to the zoning board.
I like the 35%.
Okay.
And how far back is can the 35% go? Or can we determine how far back it goes? So it's going to be 32 feet from the curb cut to the front of the garage. So do we know how far back, how much we want it to be?
Oh, in terms of the design, yeah.
The depth of the 35% width?
Yeah.
Is there any regulation?
There isn't any regulation about that, no. So there's, generally DPW, they control in terms of the right-of-way permit, control the width, so the throat width for the driveway entrance, and that would be 35% of the width. And so we can establish that and then adjust.
So Carrie, are you saying that would be the default if we said nothing, or we need to actually say that?
No, that would be the default, because anything different than that or larger than that would require the applicant to go back to the zoning board, because that wasn't specifically called out as part of one of the variances.
Okay.
35 and 17 and a half.
Wouldn't the driveway just naturally flow toward the opening of the garage anyway?
Just angularly from
Right.
whatever we determine the third is. That seems to
So
make the
the
most sense.
35% of 50,
Much
Right.
smaller than 32, and then, yeah.
17.5 foot.
So should we put that in our language?
I'm saying that we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'm going to suggest that the condition be the driveway at the gutter be maximum of 35% of the lot width and tapered to the width of the garage.
It's fine.
All right, the first matter is a seeker determination, of which town staff has helped us prepare our findings. But as it relates to part two of the application of the site short environmental assessment form impact assessment, I think in general, the 11 items before us that we would find no or small impact may occur, which include the standard 11 items that relate to material conflict with adopted land use, change in the intensity of the land, impair character, quality, existing community, etc. Part three of the determination of significance. The proposed subdivision of land is an unlisted action. The town-owned parcel is being subdivided to allow for a small lot to be sold to the owner of the property directly across from 1336 Bayshore Boulevard. The new lot and proposed garage will serve as an accessory to the pre-existing lot and home located directly across the street at 1336 Bayshore Boulevard. The proposed lot dimensions will ensure that the newly created lot and/or structure could not support a separate dwelling unit in the future without the need for future variances. There are no adverse impacts associated with the subdivision of this lot. Does anyone disagree with anything that I've said therein? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion regarding the seeker. This relates to an unlisted action negative declaration.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. Respective PB 1604-1, respect to seeker, I move that this is an unlisted action negative declaration. 16040-2, excuse me.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. I meant to mention that tonight we have Mr. Alan Richards in place Bernie Blocky tonight. He is our designated and legislated substitute planning board member, and welcome to tonight's meeting. Apologize. So now we're looking for subdivision approval.
Jay's ready.
No one else is volunteering.
Mr. Chairman, I move in the matter of PB 1604-2, request by Christopher Brett with permission from the town of Arundecoit for subdivision approval to subdivide a portion of town-owned land. Tax ID number 092-08-1-27-11, directly across from 1336 Bay Shore Boulevard, to create a 50 by 100-foot building lot in R1 residential district. I move approval, subject to the following. I believe number one is the garage will be no more than 32 feet by 32 feet. And then the second is the width of the curb cut will be 35% of the width of the lot, so that should figure to 17.5 feet. Tapered to the width of the garage, and that's it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Seeing none, motion carries.
Okay, man, keep writing 6.
Thank you for investing in Arundecoit.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yes.
Just so you're aware, Natalie Best, the applicant for the first item on the agenda, is here in the room. There was a misunderstanding. She thought the workshop was her one and only appearance opportunity, so she's here whenever you're ready for her.
All right, well then we'll move back to the first matter before us. Back to the future.
Okay. Back to the
Back to the past.
Case number PV 1604-1, upon the matter of request by Natalie Best for signage approval to install a 12-foot by 2-foot externally lit sign on premises 653 Titus Avenue in a mixed-use commercial district.
I apologize for being tardy.
What you just need to do is just basically introduce what you're looking to do.
All right, I'm Natalie Best, and I've rented this space at 653 Titus Avenue. It's the business address 655. It was previously the Yo Crave area, and we've removed the sign, which was originally 12 foot by 4 foot. I already own a 12 foot by 2 foot sign from a previous location that I'd like to move to this location. It's the same material. There's no damage to the building behind where the sign had been, so I won't need to do any painting, just a little light cleaning. And the externally lit portion of it is already there. I would just be utilizing the lights that are available.
About your business, you get a little free advertising.
It's a portrait studio. Babies, seniors, families, everything, come on down.
Any questions from the board regarding this application? Jay, Rich, Kimmy? No?
Did you happen to get a chance to receive the letter from the HIP people? They made a recommendation that you put a black border around this,
Oh, no, I did not see that.
which would perhaps solve your problem with the underlying, and it seems to set the sign off much better. And
Yeah, and make it a little larger as well. Did they recommend what it should be made of?
Construction paper, no.
Blackboard.
Negatives.
Yeah, that would be cool. I could definitely try to incorporate that. The sign is like a a thin metal, just sign material. I don't know how,
Yeah, I would
I would
recommend
attach that.
whatever you use, try to do something that's relatively maintenance-free. So
Yeah.
you don't have to go up and paint it.
I mean, you'd probably just get a 3-foot by 9-foot piece of metal that's
Metal.
painted black along
Just
the
put
edges,
around
and then
edges.
just put that up first.
Okay,
And then put
yeah.
your sign on top of it.
Yeah, okay, I like that, I can do that.
It's basically a frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I can handle that. Here, you can.
Kimmy?
Nope, I was going to make the same comment. I think it's a good idea.
Michael?
No, I'm set, thank you.
Mary?
All set?
Alan?
I'm all set, thank you.
This time, I'd like to open it up to public input. Anyone wishing to speak in regards to this application may do so at this time.
Oh, we stole your thunder.
I don't,
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Ann Burns, and I live at 199 Bellhurst Drive, and I'm here representing the community group that made the comments. I apologize that you didn't receive it before tonight. We sent it last week. So I'm hoping that emails. I know, but I didn't have her email. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just here to reiterate, we loved everything you're doing. We love that you're putting a locally owned business in there. It's a cool fit with the neighborhood. And we love that you're reusing the lights. We think the gooseneck lighting, the red lights are going to be the perfect complement to the colors. I mean, it was just like the perfect thing. That you're reusing the sign from your other business. It just saves the environment a lot of headaches, and it just moves things along. But we wanted your business to be more visible, so that's why we suggested this black border. As Peter mentioned, you could do a metal, you could do an MDO board. Painting it black. There's a lot of different ways to make it happen. You might want to talk to Southpaw Signs. They're right in Seabreeze. He might have some recommendations for you. So, other than that, we're glad. Welcome to the neighborhood. Thank you, everybody.
anyone else from the public would like to speak in regards to this application may do so. Seeing none, I will close the public input portion.
I have a quick question. With the addition of the background now, are we approving a 13 by 3 sign? Because
That's not bigger than the code, right?
No, it's up to this.
I don't know, I said add black border plus or minus 6 inches.
Yeah, that's,
Presuming that would be your condition, someone's condition.
And just to clarify, it's the board's discretion in terms of the sign of the size of the signage. So you're able to make that change.
And also, Alan, just to your point, the existing sign, the Yo Crave sign is 4 by 12, so the board would be approving a sign that would be of a greater width.
okay.
I'm going to add maximum size 3 foot by 13 feet.
Did you say it's, how much, what are the dimensions now?
The actual sign is 2 by 12.
2 by 2.
So 6
Won't
inches additional
exceed.
on each side is an additional foot, so that'd be 3 feet by 13 feet, according to my new math.
You're recycling a sign, is my understanding.
Right.
Yes.
So the border can be up to 6 inches wide. You can,
Excellent. I can do that.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion if you're ready.
I am ready for
And,
seeker.
We don't need secret for that.
This is a
Type
type 2.
Right.
On PB 1604-1, upon the matter of request of Natalie Best for signage approval to install a 12-foot by 2-foot externally lit sign on premises 653 Titus Avenue in a Muck mixed-use commercial district, I would move approval of that, with the only condition being that the maximum signage size be 3 feet by 13 feet, and that she add a black border up to 6 inches in width.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for investing in Arundecoit.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is case number PB 1603-3. Upon the matter of request by Land Tech Surveying and Planning, acting as agent for Lighthouse Point Property Associates, for preliminary final site plan approval, Woodlot Environmental Protection Overlay District permit and floodplain EPOD permit to construct a 135-unit multifamily apartment development comprised of 2 4-story, 54 multifamily apartment unit buildings with ground-level parking and 1 3-story, 27 multifamily apartment unit building with 2-story clubhouse with pool and site-related improvements on premises 951 and 1027 Thomas Avenue and 45 Pattonwood Drive in a River Harbor district.
All right, before we get started, Ms. Carey, was she out in the hall? At any rate, I wanted to summarize a few things before we get started. What we're doing tonight, at our workshop, the board has declared ourselves the intent to be lead agent, but we have not heard back from all the involved parties yet. And I understand the city of Rochester is still going to be responding. We don't know in what regard. So we have deemed that the application is complete as regards to seeker.
It's still under review. We're
Still under review.
still under review by the town staff
And
and
we're
the
still
town
waiting for
engineer.
the involved agencies,
We're still waiting for
the
the,
involved agencies to respond to us.
yeah, interested and involved are still
So we're
responding.
still waiting on that. Tonight, the applicant is going to present some additional information to us. The public input portion is still open. The public wish to speak in regards to this application, we may do so. We would hope that it would be in regards to any new information presented before us, or any additional information beyond what you've already presented the last time. But besides that, I now leave it to the applicant.
Good evening.
Did we get any copies of anything? Or are you just presenting it now?
No, you did get, I believe, Carrie, didn't you get copies?
You got it tonight?
The information that was in the packet that was handed out tonight was updated drawings, I believe. The letter from Leader. Oh, didn't you hand?
We got PDFs of these?
You got it right here.
We got PDFs of these this
It's on your desk.
What was the?
I did send PDFs to Carrie, so I don't know if she's forwarded them to
We
you.
got
or-
PDFs of these, what, Friday?
Yeah, it's right on your desk. There it is. No, you should have it sitting there. What's this?
There it is, right there. Lighthouse, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
Yes. We have our packets.
Yeah, I got it, thank you.
He was only looking with his left eye.
all right.
It was on his right side.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Again, I'm Alan Knopf for the applicant. We did want to just update you on some additional submissions. We did make some adjustments and give you some new information in response to comments both from the public and from town staff and the board. The first is, we do have some new drawings. There were some concerns about height and the appearance, so we have eliminated the tower on top of the building to lower the height of the building. We've changed the coloring and I can see these.
Yeah, there's a handheld mic.
We did, so we did kind of made the building not quite as tall. It is now at a height of about 312. Actually, the houses on Beacon View, their base is 268. The tops of the houses are about 295 or so. So the difference is only about 17 feet. We also gave you in the packet a view from number 40, a simulated view from number 40 from about 1.5 stories up looking at the project. And basically, all you see is trees. You can see like a boat canopy in blue between some of the trees, but you really don't see the project at all. So that's and we did change the coloring in response to some of the comments. Next, there's 2 items that we do have to give the board that we have not that are not complete. One is we're waiting for Monroe County Department of Transportation's comments, and we still don't have those. So. Yeah, John.
Good evening, John Sharaba with Landtech. Late this afternoon, I spoke with Mr. Brent Pedmorden, who's the director of the Monroe County DOT. They are formulating their comments now, but he told me there are no showstoppers with the current layout and the configuration of the access and the density, so they have no issues, but we're still waiting for their formal response. Just want to mention that. Thanks.
And the other item is we're working on our landscape plan with Heinrich Fischer, landscape architect. It's going to be a really great plan, but it's not done yet. So we should have that into the board in short order.
For our workshop?
For your workshop, yes. You will have that for the workshop. Also, we are going to commit to a formal property value protection plan. So that is in the works. We do have a draft. We're not quite ready to release that, but you'll have that by the workshop. So you will see.
What does that mean? Can you, for everyone?
Basically, to ensure some of the properties that are adjacent.
You need to use the handheld microphone.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. The properties here on Thomas Avenue and here, and then some of the properties that are adjoining the project on Beacon View, to ensure that, I mean, we believe property values are only going to go up. But we're going to guarantee values for those properties. That if somebody tries to go through a process and sell and it doesn't sell for what it would have appraised out before the project, we'll buy it or pay the difference, basically. So we'll have and that's done, and you've seen that around in a lot of projects. That sort of thing is offered. So we're happy to do that because, frankly, I mean, we don't think we'll ever end up spending a dime on it other than the appraisals, but we're happy to do that.
How is that done? Is that done in the form of an insurance that you buy, or is it a contract you enter?
It's basically a contract. You're basically an offer, okay. An offer that if anyone wants to take us up on it. Okay. And we'll have the details. We're kind of working through the details on that, but you see that with like, I don't know, mines, landfills, and things like that. There's a lot of examples you can look at on the internet and whatnot. The next and final issue really we wanted to address was the Brownfield Cleanup Plan or program, because I think because there were some I think there was some not everybody totally understood the program. I guess I'm very familiar with it. I'm sure your council is, but I think we talked about and realized that probably not everybody here is familiar, and certainly members of the public are not familiar. So I thought I would just give you a quick thumbnail sketch of how the program works. And what I want to preface this with is what we're doing is remediating a brownfield. So that's an environmental positive. Seeker, you look at, is the project going to cause significant adverse impacts? This is going to be a significant positive impact. It's going to help the environment, not hurt the environment. We're going to go through a process. We are in the middle of it under the guidance of the DEC. They have very detailed regulations that we have to go through. They review everything. Different approvals are put up for public comment from the DEC. So it's an involved process in designed to ensure that the environmental contamination that's on the site now will not impact people or the environment in the future. So the way the process works is our site is in the brownfield cleanup program. I won't go into history, but you may know there was a court battle about that we won in the New York Court of Appeals. Mainly the issue was over whether a landfill could go into the program. But we're in the program. We did a remedial investigation as required by DEC, and that involved groundwater testing, soil gas readings, soil samples, both surface and subsurface, and we put that all together. We submitted that to DEC in 2014. They have been quite busy. We could not get formal comments out of them. We met with them and been talking to them. We submitted a remedial alternatives analysis also back last year. And what that is, the remedial alternatives analysis is where you basically look at the different options for remediation and say, what's the pros and cons? Do they meet the regulatory standards? So you always look at the no action alternative, and that doesn't work because it's not protective of the environment as the site sits right now. Because this is going to be restricted, what we call restricted residential, which means multifamily residential, we have opted for a track 4 cleanup. We cannot, for this site, you cannot do single-family residential like Beacon View or whatever. We could not do that unless we did a track 1 cleanup, which basically would require to dig up the site. We basically would have to excavate and haul it off, which is way too many zeros on the number to even think about, even if the zoning was for that and all. So what we've done is submitted a plan, and the contamination there is really historic industrial waste and construction and demolition debris. And there's ash and whatnot. So the issues are really metals, and there's lead and some of the heavy metals, and then there's semi-volatiles, which are probably from coal ash. It's not really clear. I think historically this was basically like a river delta for the Genesee, and the Vanderbilts built the railroad, and then there was swampy land behind it and got filled in. And that's the land we're talking about now. So it is historic fill, has these contaminants. Our plan is going to be to cover with either 2 feet of, we're going to ensure there's 2 feet of clean dirt on the top, or else pavement or building slabs. And that meets the DEC requirements. The purpose of the cover is to isolate the contamination from people. It's not so much to, sometimes you'll do a landfill closure where you're trying to keep water from infiltrating or stopping gases from coming through the cover. That is not the purpose of the brownfield cover. The purpose is to keep people away and to really demarc the area of contamination. We have a site management plan, and that will govern if you, for instance, want to penetrate the cap. So if you go to dig a hole and dig down, in this area, frankly, the surface isn't really so much the problem. The contamination is more in the subsurface. So if we dig down deep, like we will have to do with building footers and all, or foundations, and here actually the foundations will be pretty complex because the geotechnical, the geology isn't really very good because it's fill, it's like mush, and we really have to do a very sophisticated foundation system, sort of like we did over on Arundequoit Bay with South Point Cove, that project. They had some more sophisticated foundations to be able to support that. We're going to have to do the same sort of thing here. So if we dig up stuff and there's screening, we may have to test it depending on the situation. And of course, the fill that comes in has to be tested too. They've got a whole regimen every, I don't know if it's 1,000 cubic yards or what, but they've got guidance on how much you've got to test, and it's got to meet the standards. And then you put restrictions on the property. We can't have single-family residential. We can't have vegetable gardens. We can't drink the groundwater, that sort of stuff. So that's the process. And overall, the whole idea is we're going to get approved from the DEC a remedial plan. There will be public input on that. So once the DEC did finally comment, I think we got a letter April 8th, because we, kept contacting them, and I think the town might have talked to them and members of the public, and we said, you gotta give us some comments here because we're moving along and everybody wants to know what you think of the plan. So they did give us comments. They basically said either we have to cover the whole site with 2 feet, or the pavement or building slab, or do more testing. We're just going to do at this point, we opted for we're going to cover and get it done. So we're going to submit, we're almost done, we expect by the end of the week, a revised remedial alternatives analysis as well as a revised remedial investigation report. And then you will have that, I trust, before the workshop. I did want to introduce Pete von Schondorf. Peter is a environmental geologist from the Leader Group who has been handling this, and I thought Pete could address that, plus the questions about we submitted a letter about the permeable pavement, and just to explain that issue.
Good evening. I guess just to build on what Alan has already mentioned about the process. It is a highly regulated process. Each phase of the process is given review and public opportunity to comment on it. In the stage we're at right now is what Alan said was a remedial alternatives review. Once we cross over that threshold and DEC gives us our approval, we go into another stage where this DEC decides on what action will be taken. We've gotten some good feedback from DEC regarding that, and we expect what they refer to as the record of decision will be that the cap will be installed, or the cover will be installed. That record of decision is kind of the template, if you will, for the design process. The design is very similar to any other design for a building or a site development. We go into the different buildings, for example, different land uses, and how that remediation must be planned and done. In general, this is a pretty simple one. We have that 2-foot cover to contend with as a kind of a threshold, if you will. But then we lay on top of that is the development itself. Alan alluded to the fact that we're going to have building slabs, various different types of pavements, including probably some what normally would be called asphalt pavements or concrete slabs. But we also have this permeable pavement, and I'll speak to that a little later. But anyway, so we form specifications for each area, each building, and we move through the process. Again, that gets reviewed by the state, public comment, and then we go into our construction phase. The construction phase involves a third-party engineering review of each day. That representative is going to be on site, making sure everything is done according to the plan. DEC will also have a representative on site, although whether it's every day or twice a day or twice a week, it's up to their prerogative. So there's review at each portion of it. At the completion, we provide, the third-party engineering firm provides what they call a final engineering report. That report essentially summarizes the engineer or the construction, gives all the details of all the test results, things like that, things that had to be changed because of some encountered material or a change because of subsurface conditions. That gets finalized and the owner gets a certification of completion. So it's not that we just go on and build this project without any overview. There's lots of it. I'm sure the town will have their inspectors out there as well.
There was mention of public input. When does public input occur?
When the reports get finalized and approved, at some stage in the approval, I should say, but it's generally when the DEC is satisfied with the report or the design.
How does that occur? I mean, do they advertise?
If there's a public announcement saying that Lighthouse Point is finished with their remedial investigation report and alternatives analysis, it goes out for public comment. It's generally 30, 60 days, something like that. Anyway, some date greater than 30. And they take that public comment. If they feel that somebody's raised a good point, they shoot it back to us. We have to address that comment to their satisfaction. The general construction of it, again, like I said, very similar to any other construction project. There's site preparation, all of your erosion controls and things that will have to be put into place before the earth is moved and the construction project's completed. Earlier I mentioned about permeable pavements. We prepared a letter for the project regarding the permeable pavement. The short version is it's a very beneficial type of construction that can be used on projects. Not only does it reduce the amount of runoff that goes into your storm sewer or out to the river, there's a lot of other environmental aspects to it that make it beneficial. Like Alan said, soil gas is generally a concern on landfill type properties. We don't really see the types of contaminants or the concentrations that normally would raise red flags for that. But as a safety precaution, we're considering things like permeable pavements, possibly even pilings for the buildings to leave an open space underneath the buildings. So we're removing those hindrances that might cause an accumulation of gases that would create a problem. So as the name of the pavement conjures up ideas, this thing is breathing. Not only does it accept water, but it allows water to evaporate, allows gases to come up and distribute into the atmosphere.
In the parking garage level, will there be a passive or active ventilation system under the slab, or will it be permeable pavement, or is there a necessity for neither?
I don't know exactly what they're planning on that.
Yeah, the parking garage, we're going to have a passive system underneath the slab, and then we're also going to have an active fan system just for the garage itself. And then, of course, it's open. It's sort of a belt and suspenders because you have the passive venting system, and then it's really open to the air in large part anyways. But as Pete said, this particular property, the soil gas really isn't a very big concern. North of the bridge, it's a different story because that was garbage, and garbage, generates methane in large quantities, and there was kind of a hodgepodge of industrial chemicals that were put, especially over really on Shumway's property there. That's more of there it's a much different concern than here, where we've got more we got SVOCs, not only semi-volatiles, not volatiles. And in large part, there's a little hit of benzene or whatever, but it's not a big pervasive problem. and the metals obviously don't volatilize, so.
I guess to finish up on that thought, so instead of having what Alan described north of the bridge where you have this landfill where the decaying garbage is creating methane or other types of gases, we've kind of got almost an inert type of material here. But regardless, instead of having vents, so to speak, to vent this gas out, we have this permeable pavement and green spaces that will allow the gas to dissipate. So we're not going to have the odor problems vents usually create. We're not going to have potential health hazard or safety risk either. These things should be very good at dissipating all those accumulating gases. Yes.
Well, the maintenance of the permeable pavement, I know we'll probably get a little bit ahead. Is that going to be part of the function of the HOA? Or the management?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the management would be required to do that, so certainly that'll be part of our responsibility.
The one thing that I really didn't comment too much on, but the final engineering report will produce this site management plan. Now, the site management plan is not only to look at what we might say is strict environmental issues. It also looks at the upkeep of the property, because we don't want the surface deteriorating through some sort of erosion or lack of maintenance to allow exposures to the buried or covered material or covered contaminants. So to your point, those types of things will be inspected annually with the site management plan and be a requirement for the owner to address.
How do you taper off the 2 foot of cover into lands you don't own?
That will be something that has to be reconciled in the design.
I mean, that's always going to be an issue, but yeah, that's something. And frankly, we just have to show 2 feet of clean. The top 2 feet has to be clean, so it doesn't necessarily. I mean, the plan is to put dirt on, but as long as the top 2 feet is clean, we're good with it, basically. So.
And we can show that by sampling as well. If it's determined that something does need to be tapered off, the state would require us to sample that material that wouldn't have the 2 feet cover. So if the results came back poorly, we might have to excavate that so we can put 2 feet of cover on top.
I mean, is your intention to use, I don't think there's topsoil there, I guess, but, so you're maintaining that the existing site has got some measure of clean fill already over it?
Yes, that's what the results of the remedial investigation show. There's just some hesitancy about how much, the number of samples that were collected, even though DEC approved the plan to collect those samples. Now they're saying, well, put 2 feet of cover over it or sample it.
But your preliminary plan is not just to raise that site 2 feet, or is it?
Well, we would. I mean, the plan is to regrade, and we would have either 2 feet of cover on top of it, or the pavement. I mean, a large part of this is going to be paved or the building slab, but I mean that would have to be worked out in the final design to marry it with the grading plan we presented. Some of the dirt may have to go on off site to make it work, or we may have to go back and show DEC that the top 2 feet is clean enough already and give them more sampling. That could happen in certain locations, whatever. So.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes. Yep.
Do we have questions from the board?
I got a couple.
Okay. Start with you, Alan.
How are we doing with the neighbors and you meeting with the neighbors and explaining what's going on with that?
Well, we met with the neighbors back last summer. I mean, we haven't met with them. I think a lot of them are here. So we haven't had another meeting with the neighbors because I thought they were coming to the meetings here.
Okay, because I think there's still some issues that the neighbors still are presenting to us, so I just am encouraging you.
Well, I know, I don't know what, I mean, it seemed to me their issue was with the height. They want to know about the brownfield. We're offering the property value protection. I think there was some concern about whether site access for the public would be limited, and it's quite the opposite. Right now, it's private property and nobody has a right to walk on it. We're going to open it up so public can walk across the property, and you'll see that in the landscape plan, but we're going to allow public access across the property, which right now is not allowed.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that information. I bet the public is too, and I just encourage you to keep on getting the information out, because that seems to be the best way to do it. You're claiming there's no gas coming out of here, so there would be nothing to recycle as far as methane or other gases that could be reused within the project itself for any of its own heating or cooling?
That's right. There's I was going to say, never say zero, but there's very little. I mean, the only problem you get into with soil gas is where sometimes it'll accumulate under a hard surface, and then you do get a lot, and then it goes through like a crack or whatever. So that's why the permeable is actually better. But here, there's not enough to do that. North of the bridge, and when we looked at that, there is a fair amount of methane, and there you probably would want to collect it and might be able to recycle it, use it on site for street lights or whatever, but not in this area. There's just, because it's not really I wouldn't say there's no garbage, but it was predominantly this industrial type fill.
Stuff that doesn't break down. What's the amount of time between the DEC's sign off and you're going into the ground to start putting up walls?
Well, the DEC, we're expecting by July, say, that we'll have final approval on the remedial alternatives analysis, and then we would have to submit the detail. It's sort of like getting, preliminary site plan approval or whatever. They're going to approve the concept for the cleanup, but then we have to give them the detailed drawings and exactly how we're going to engineer it. So I would say that'll take a few months to get through that process and get the final
I guess what
sign-off.
I'm looking for is the amount of time it's going to take to clean up, is what I'm asking before you start putting the walls up for the buildings.
Well, part of it would be, the dirt, the soil cover, and then constructing the pavement and the building slabs and foundations. So I don't know, Pete, maybe you could speak to.
It could be something that's, contemporaneous with one another. We could be putting the cover down as we're prepping for building construction at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, it really would be part of the building construction process. It's not like we're going to go and clean up the site and then come back and build a project. It would all be happening at the same time. We'd be grading and then putting on the 2 feet cover or the pavement or whatever the case might be, and that would all be coordinated.
So you could theoretically work in the southeast corner with the cover and then move to the northeast west corner, but start construction on the southeast while you're doing the remediation on the other part?
Yes, we could do that, yes.
Okay. And then one other question, the 2-foot cap that you're talking about, obviously some of it could be excavated out, some of it could just be added on top. Will all of that be done after the underground utilities and all that is in place?
Yeah, I think it would probably depend.
correct me if I'm wrong. This is an integrated process where the building construction and everything is going on at once. It's not like it's a clean up and then put in some pipes and then clean up and put in a foundation and then clean up and put in a parking lot. It's all one big plan where you're encountering material, you're remediating material as you're doing an ongoing construction project. Is that correct?
It could be. Again, once the development design comes into place and we know how to design the remediation, we might find, for example, because of where water and sewer pipes need to go, we might decide, all right, we're going to excavate this trench. All these utilities are going to go into place. And we're going to remove the contaminated soil that we find and build this clean zone. That may be the first thing we do because it's the deepest and we want to work up.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, and ideally, yes, we would install utilities and all, at the outset. I'm not going to say there's not going to be a case where we have to go back and dig a hole in what we've already covered, in which case we do have this soil management or site management plan, and that will govern what happens when you go back and have to pierce the cover and dig up, and that, whether you have to test some of the materials depending upon the characteristics and whatnot. So that could happen. Ideally, you don't want to, dig a hole twice or whatever, Ideally, it's all coordinated and the building construction is happening at the same time. However, we're not going to build all the buildings at once, so there may be, a temporary cover in some part that meets the 2 feet, and then later on it's moved out and you substitute a building slab. So that could happen.
I mean, but you have a site work component of which partly of this is remediation, and then you need to work your project associated with the sampling and the data that you found, and then that's going to dictate the phasing of the project.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But it's not like you're digging for gold and there's gold over in this corner and you're digging. I mean, there might be a couple instances like that, and you're going to dig it out, find a nugget, and put back.
Yeah. I mean, and again, as Pete said, we did all this testing, did all kinds of testing. I can't tell you it doesn't happen that when you're digging you find something that you didn't know was going to be there.
Right.
Especially because it's a land-filled site. If it was like, I work on a lot of sites where it's like a spill and you got a plume of contamination and you got a pretty good idea. Here, who knows, somebody might have buried something 50 years ago.
By a tractor, a car, or
yeah, there's no telling. So, and that's what that site management plan addresses too, that if you find something unexpected, you got to deal with it.
It's like what happened at the port when they found that giant thing of slag.
Oh, hopefully we won't find that.
But I mean, that was they tested that site and they knew it was, needed remediation, and next thing you know, find something like that.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with it.
Right, yes. And the DEC will be informed and we'll cover go by the plan and all that.
Mary?
I'm good.
Michael?
I'm having difficulty envisioning what permeable pavement looks like and how it works.
Think of a
sponge.
Think of a
Been to
sponge
I-Square?
that's hard.
I-Square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the same material, I-Square's parking lot, or maybe you haven't been there?
I'm not familiar with it.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I-Square.
I-Square's.
Okay, that's what it looks like then.
Yeah.
Okay.
All of their sidewalks, all of the parking in the new maintenance building.
Yeah. Now, are there, I don't know if viscosity is the right word, but is there different,
Porosity.
It's porous. It's like a sponge, if you
is
will.
there
It's like
different rate of, so they can control that by the pavement itself?
Yeah, it's an engineered product, and depending on what you're trying to achieve,
Okay.
you design how much aggregate or how much cement you use or binder
Right.
Okay.
to achieve that.
All right, that helps me. Thank you, Peter.
Kimmy?
I have a couple questions, and thank you, Peter, for joining us tonight. And also, thank you both for explaining here to the public what this whole process is about. Brownfield remediation sounds kind of scary, so if you've never walked through it before, you might not understand the process. So maybe while we're talking, if you could share with the public, what would happen if we did nothing? Would it just go away?
No, I mean, it's the contamination is going to stay there. So you've got heavy metals like lead and whatnot in the ground. Somebody digs in, some kid's digging, who knows what. It's disturbed and people can be exposed, or it could leach out or whatever. So, right now you've got an unremediated brownfield. What we're going to do is fix the problem. So, and avoid environmental, any kind
And
of
when you're
environmental
digging those trenches and putting in those utilities, if you find contaminated soils, that has to be hauled off.
For the most part, yes.
It's not like it's
Yes.
put
If
back
we
on
find
site.
contaminated, if it's contaminated, yes, we're gonna have to do that. Yes.
couple other questions. Will there be continuous monitoring and post-construction monitoring, ambient air monitoring, monitoring in the garage or in the buildings? It's probably part of that site management plan, but I'm just curious.
Well, like I said, the post-construction, there is going to be an annual inspection by a professional engineer that reviews the condition of the property, reviews what activities have transpired to make sure that everything was done according to the plan.
Will there be any air quality monitoring happening?
There might be if, say, for example, there is a need for what we might refer to as an active soil venting situation. It could be required in the plan to have that monitored. To your point about during construction, air monitoring is a huge part of it. It's the third-party engineer is going to have to set up air monitoring stations so he can sample upwind and downwind, whichever way the prevailing wind is going. They're going to set up however many monitoring stations, probably on the order of 3. But it's another thing that has to be addressed during construction.
Thank you. I just want to make sure the public understands that whole process.
And there's not only is there going to be air monitoring for, say, airborne dusts, there's going to be monitoring for these volatile organic compounds that might crop up.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And-
also in the garage, we would have CO monitoring too.
Right.
And that would trigger the fans and whatnot.
Perfect. And post-construction, the site management plan that you've talked about, just for the purpose of, since we're all here together, who oversees that?
The DEC does. And then we have to have an annual report that's certified by an engineer that they have inspected the covers intact, we followed the rules, and there's not some problem, whatever. So.
And also, what's interesting about the site management plan, it isn't specifically written for Lighthouse Point. It's written for the property. So if there is a change of ownership, that new owner is going to be responsible for that site management plan and following it. So it's not something that, 10 years from now, it's forgotten about. It's a living thing. I believe it gets recorded.
There's an environmental easement. There's an easement in favor of the DEC, and that refers to the site management plan that then is on file with the DEC, and basically says you got to comply with the site management plan. So it really is it really runs with the land. So, 30 years from now, it's still there. We may all be gone, but.
Thank you for expressing that in this public forum. I think it's important for people to understand. Thank you.
Richard?
I have nothing.
Jay?
I either have a lot or I'm not going to say much, but I'm probably going to err on the side of a lot at this point. Just bear with me. I'm looking at this, I guess the general problem I'm having is that we're supposed to, at some point, do secret determination, and that's this board's responsibility. And right now, right in front of me, from the report, it looks like, and that there's one of the monitoring sites on the report shows levels that are above what they consider background with respect to benzene and vinyl chloride on the site. A lot of the monitoring that was done around the neighborhood where there was some concerns to the north. So there wasn't a lot of monitoring done in this area. So that's my first concern. My second concern is that I'm not as concerned about it right now because it's private property. And it's going to stay private property, I realize, but there's going to be ways to get around it, like where you're granting the public access through it. And so I'm concerned about that because if we get this wrong, I don't know what the town's liability is going to be because we're saying that people can pass through there now. Now if someone, it sounds like, lawyer's heaven, if you would, that because now the town may be liable for some of the, if someone claims to get sick as a result of whatever may or may not be in the ground here. And that's one of the concerns I have. But you also, and one of the things that I want to talk a little longer too.
Sorry. I'll put it down.
Because as soon as I stop talking, you're going to start talking, and I'll never get another word in. So the other thing so now we have this potential, and I don't see the remediation. I don't see a remediation plan right now because there isn't one. But what you're saying is that the DEC is going to be responsible for that, and they're going to monitor it, and they'll do it. So it's our responsibility to give secret determination. It's somebody else's responsibility to make sure it happens. And we don't have, if we're going to get access to a report that shows how you're going to get these numbers down, and these numbers aren't really an issue, then I'd love to see that, but I haven't seen it yet. And so my concern is really the town's overall. Obviously, I'm concerned about the public. I'm concerned about lots of stuff. But in the end, I'm also concerned about the town's liability in all this. If we're going to open this up to the public, which sounds like a great idea, except as soon as somebody gets hurt or somebody considers themselves getting hurt because of what may or may not be in here, I don't know, it just seems like a lawsuit waiting to happen. So that's what I'm concerned about.
Okay. First of all, and again, obviously you have your own attorney, so, but the planning board doesn't have liability for approving a private project for what happens on the project. But even if you did, the liability would be not allowing us to go through and remediate, because this is an environmental positive. So if you said, no, we're not going to let you go ahead and remediate in accordance with what the DEC prescribes, to me, that's, if there was liability, and again, there really isn't when the town is not actively involved, that would be the problem. If you said, no, don't do what the DEC says. As far as, yeah, I mentioned that earlier, there was like a hit of benzene, and I guess maybe it was vinyl chloride. There's a little bit, but it really is not a huge problem, and it's fairly, it's not the most significant issue. We are dealing with it according to what the DEC says. So as far as seeker goes, we have proposed a solution here. We've proposed a track 4 remediation with 2-foot cover, with the permeable pavement, with regular pavement, with building slab. We're going to do, that is our proposal. That is our project. It's going to be done all in accordance with what the DEC requires. We're going to take a bad situation and fix it. So.
Well, you're going to remediate it. You're not fixing it because it's still there.
Well, okay. But we're going to remediate it as the DEC, in accordance with all the DEC requirements. So that's all you can ask. Again, the alternative is if there's an environmental impact that's there now and we're going to take it away. So seeker's only concerned with adverse impacts. We're going to show we're doing everything that the DEC requires.
I would think as it relates to seeker, this is probably the least issue. As it relates to seeker, it's all the view shed, it's the noise, it's the traffic, it's all of those other aspects that are more impactful, if you will. The cleanup is the opposite of that. Well, it's impactful in that it's a positive.
Well, I'll agree with you that there's not a negative impact on the as far as the cleanup goes.
Potentially.
Yeah. But we're committed to that. If we weren't going to do a cleanup, then I'd say, okay, there's an issue. But what else are we going to do? We're doing exactly what the DC wants us to do. They're going to supervise what more can be done.
Well, I'd like to see what the plans are, I guess, is the thing. I haven't seen any of that yet.
I don't know that we have a horse in the game. I mean, it's between them and the DEC, and I mean, we can ask to see it eventually.
We will see it when it's produced, right. And there will be a public hearing to comment on it when we're
right.
at that point.
And we're gonna do seeker before then.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like, I give an example. I told you I'm working on this casino project that they negged, and it was a big project, but they had plans. We're going to do off-site improvements. We're going to make road improvements. In the seeker analysis, we said these are the improvements we're going to make. the town didn't, it's not the town's approval, we still got to go and get permits from the DOT. And then the DOT, you hand in all these detailed plans. Now here, we're not doing that. We don't need that. As far as, we're not going to widen Thomas Avenue. It's not necessary. But this is just one of the other agencies. We got to do we've presented, our stormwater plans and all. But yeah, do we have to finalize the SWIP? Do we have to get the permits come after the seeker process? So we commit to what we're going to do. The lead agency makes a determination, and then we go and get our final approvals. If DEC doesn't approve our remediation, we're going to have to come back to you, because then the project you approved, we didn't get approval from the DEC.
It's just like when we're in a, waterfront or things like that, the DEC's, we don't really have the purview over that, but it's a requirement of their application and approval process that the DEC, which is the governing agency over those approvals, is involved and approves it.
Okay.
That's the same with the zoning board or any other involved agency.
Yeah, we got to go to the, we got to go to the zoning board on the density issues.
Understood. I'm still concerned about it, but I'll deal with it.
I think we're all concerned about it, but in essence, the utmost concern is the DEC, and they're the umbrella agency that has the greatest purview, influence, and expertise in those regards.
Okay. The only other question I had is, have we resolved anything about the woodlot? Are you going to do you need to get a variance from the zoning board for that, for this size, for the lot that you have, or?
We need two things. We need the EPOD permit from you, and there our plan is, and again, I have to provide the landscape plan, so you don't have all the details. I understand that. But our plan is to replace the trees that were, you have an EPOD basically without trees right now, and we're going to bring back trees, not maybe in the same location, but we're going to bring back trees, but you would have to approve the EPOD permit. The other thing, on the density, it's just we're in front of the zoning board, and they've got to decide that issue.
All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I've already talked a bunch on the environmental stuff, I think, as we've gone along, but I'm going to address the architecture, and to me, it's going backwards, and drastically backwards. And I think we need to have your architect at the workshop or something so we can have some direct dialogue, because this, to me, does not fit the River Harbor District. It is just in reverse as far as I'm considering it, the way it looks and the way it feels. It's just a huge, massive box, and it has no character that I would say is indicative of the River Harbor District and the guidelines associated with it. So you might benefit by us having some direct dialogue with that person, or it can
All right, that'd be great.
filtered through you anyway. But
We'd rather have them here, and we'd rather have some more,
so I would
Rather
suggest
have some-
if you would have them show up at the workshop so we can address some of those things, because
yes.
I think you're starting to address some of the way it fits into the site and things like that, but the building is just not.
All right. Okay.
At this point, we'll open it up to public input. Anyone wishing to speak in regards to this may do so.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Wasser, 180 Beacon View Court. I'm an avid gardener. I grow a lot of fruits and vegetables on my property, and I'm concerned with contamination escape during the excavation and construction. Peter, Alan, I got some questions for you. You say it's remediated. I see you kicking a hornet's nest and then covering it back over with dirt. It'd be better just not to kick it in the first place, okay? How's this brownfield classified? Is this a volunteer cleanup program? Are we under federal rules, state rules, HAZWAPER guidelines? You mentioned the DEC. Is this under EPA guidelines? I'm curious what the guidelines are for the brownfield. Second is dust control. So I told you I grow a lot of vegetables and stuff. You touched on air monitoring, but I'm not exactly sure if you're doing particulate, what kind of air monitoring you're doing, what site controls will be in place. Water curtains going to be used during the excavation. trucks. Are they going to be covered when they leave the site? Are the wheels going to be washed so dirt and mud's not on the roads, brought into the neighborhoods? During excavation, piles of dirt going to be covered? Are they going to be left in the open? I don't know. I fear seeing people working on the site in chemical moon suits here, and 10 feet away I'm seeing children on a swing set and in swimming pools. What are the guidelines for working on this site? Now, your guidelines are all for an 8-hour day, an 8-hour work day. We're 7 days, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a little different guidelines that living there we have to go by. I'm wondering about contaminated dust on houses, lawn furniture, cars, and the food I grow. Thank you, Peter and Alan. I'm curious on those.
You just addressed, right, I mean, you probably have an idea of what you'll address the comments at the end.
John Kaufman, 249 Hoffman Road. I'm only wondering whether significant amounts of subsurface material will have to be removed for the foundation work and for the utilities. And if so, how do you judge whether they're dangerous, and then what happens to the spoils if they are so judged?
Hi, I'm Robert Quitt, 155 Portview Circle in the Harbor Hill area, uphill from this and across the street. And I still strongly object to allowing this development to have access directly to Thomas Avenue. I think it's going to be a problem from a safety standpoint and from a congestion standpoint. During the winter, it's at the bottom of a hill. You're going to have cars turning left coming out of that or turning into it. And in the summer, you've got a lot of traffic in that area. And when the bridge is up, allowing boat traffic, it's even more congested. I know that there's no other access proposed for this. I understand that you do not own land underneath the bridge to allow you to access Marina Drive. But I believe that that is one possible solution. Either get an easement for that or purchase the property. Or the other alternative would be, as you mentioned, to possibly widen Thomas Avenue so that there are more lanes at the bottom of the hill. Thank you.
My name is Charles Dietz. I live at 30 Beacon View Court. I am against the proposed project as it has been presented by the Lighthouse Point Partnership. I'm here tonight to express my concerns and the concerns of many of my neighbors. I'm not afraid of change, as the lead person for this project stated at a local TV interview last week. I'm reluctant to change. I've lived in this quiet neighborhood for 42 years. Over that time, I have seen many changes to the area. I have seen a small cul-de-sac triple in size. I have seen a pond filled in that was a slam dunk for your kids to catch fish as fast as you could put your line in the water. I have seen docks and storage sheds multiply along the river. I have seen a train in its tracks that added a unique ambiance to the area disappear. I have seen a well-designed community of townhouses build up the hill. All these changes were not always embraced with enthusiasm, but all in all, not bad. With all the change, there comes concern and many questions. It was my intent to tell the board and the people gathered in this room here tonight all the reasons I felt this particular change was wrong for the neighborhood and the community. But I have decided to present some questions for you to think about instead. Listen to these questions. Don't let your politics or your town's need for additional revenue sway your thoughts on this project. Consider your own families and neighborhoods and how a project like this might affect you. Would you not be reluctant to have all chemicals and industrial waste completely removed once and for all from the proposed site? Encapsulation is only a Band-Aid that will be compromised by driving of piles and the digging of footers. Would you not be reluctant to look at a 5-story hotel-like structure in a quiet, small residential neighborhood? Would you not be reluctant about how this project might alter your property value? Would you not be reluctant about a project that claims luxury units but has rental pricing of $1,000 to $1,300 a month? Would you not be reluctant about knowing what financing is used or if federal money was being sought? And if this is the case, will subsidized housing units be mandated as part of the so-called luxury apartments? Wouldn't you be reluctant to have apartments rather than condominiums and townhouses where your neighbors own the buildings and have interest in maintaining their investment? Would you not be reluctant to have a quaint view of the river replaced by parking lot and dumpsters? Would you not be reluctant to have an already large traffic problem due to the O'Rourke Bridge get much, much worse? Would you not be reluctant about security for you and your family when 200 plus strangers and their friends converted upon your quiet street? Would you not be reluctant about the possibility of additional crime in your neighborhood in a town that has already one of the highest in the county? Would you not be reluctant about a project of this magnitude that has not provided real designs that take into effect the concerns and needs of the neighborhoods around it? Maybe the landscape and the architectural designs could be revised with some input of the neighbors that are most impacted, rather than just meeting out the corner of Thomas Avenue with a group of them. By now, I'm sure you are tired of being a bit reluctant, but these are real questions and concerns you as board members need to ask yourselves. What if this was my neighborhood? What would I want? How would I want this to impact my life and my family? Try not to be swayed by the town's need for additional tax revenue to make up for a number of failed developments that promised happy days. Table this decision and give yourselves time to really reflect on how this impacts so many families.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Lopa, and I live at 210 Totem Trail. And I'm concerned about the density. I said that at the last meeting, and I don't understand why this planning board is going to take a final site plan approval on a piece of property that doesn't meet the code that was set up by the town. 95 units is what the code says. I understand they don't have a variance yet, but why are we always presenting 135 units when there is no variance granted yet? And I'd also like to understand how many more variances from the code are they going to require? Are they going to require setback variances that are against what this town has put into place to protect the communities and protect the individuals that live here? Also, in the conversation regarding the brownfield, I am not comfortable that there's full disclosure, especially after it was pointed out that there are gases, and then the applicant said, oh yeah, there are gases. So I'm concerned that we're not getting the full details of what's required at this, and I'm also concerned, as the gentleman said, about dust. I do have a boat down there, and I'm concerned that this is going to be a project over multiple years. The gentleman over there, Alan, asked what the time frame was, and no answer was supplied. So I think there's a lot of questions that this planning board should be asking before they give any final site plan approval. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. Joanne Mudge, 80 Beacon View Court. A brief review of the River Harbor neighbors' opposition to Lighthouse Point apartment complex can be quickly answered why this project is flawed and is a disservice to the neighborhood and town as it stands. Opposition petition number 1, dated March 2016. 117 River Harbor District neighbors, about 92%. In fact, raise your hand. I see some people that signed the petition. Signed the petition to oppose the massive 135-unit apartment complex and submitted to the town's planning board and zoning board. Now, March 28th, the public hearing, planning board, the majority of River Harbor District neighbors spoke against the project and encouraged the board members to not approve the proposed site plan, zoning code variances, and EPOD permits. The people in favor of the project who addressed the board at the last meeting were not area residents or even residents of West Irondequoit. Once again, if the planning board is the lead agency for the seeker, a positive declaration with public input is imperative. Don't be misled. You're being misled. Now, the new update since the last meeting related to this matter. The New York State Department, DEC, did not accept the developer's environmental remedial investigation report and the remedial alternatives analysis report. Did not approve. It was returned to them. The New York State DEC is requesting significant changes to the report within a 30-day timeline. Significant changes. The opposing reasons exceeds the town's density code by almost 50%. Excessive traffic problems and safety issues. The EAF, the Environment Assessment Form, does not address the EPOD and how the plan impacts the designation and other potential environmental impacts. Once again, declare a positive declaration. Decrease home values, highly likely. Decreases quality of life. What do I mean? Noise and lighting. Does not satisfy demand of the town's senior citizen housing. Now, this is in accordance with the Town of Irondequoit sponsored study that was conducted by Lifespan, entitled The Town of Irondequoit Older Adult Services Study, a Town for a Lifetime, March 2016. Seniors do not want luxurious apartments. What they're looking for is assisted living and patio homes if they cannot live in their own home. This is a document that the town paid for and was sponsored. Causes an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. This is huge. The apartment complex looks Florida-like, not right for an upstate New York riverfront. Inconsistent with the town's comprehensive master plan, the one that is dated 2014, not one that has aged, that it was dated in 1999. Folks, that's 17 years ago. We're dealing with the new adopted comprehensive plan. This plan fails to meet the intent or the letter of the zoning code. That's why you're on the board, to protect the neighborhoods according to the zoning code. At the March 28th Planning Board, the developers stated to the Planning Board, the developers, are confused as to what the neighbors want. Well, the only time the developers approached us as a group, as was mentioned, was a year ago. And it was at the beginning of the original concept proposal, which included the city property. They did not afford us another meeting since the new proposal. As a consequence, of course they don't know. Isn't it obvious? I think these two public sessions is an opportunity for the developers to listen and learn our neighborhood's concerns and issues. The 117 signatures on the opposing petition make it very clear. The neighborhood does not want the proposed site plan, zoning code variances, E-pods, and permits approved. It's clear. It's written. We have a petition. We've had 2 public sessions now stating the same thing. The buildings are too big, too tall, too dense, and are not compliant with the town's master plan and zoning code. I hate to repeat myself, but apparently there is a need to repeat.
Can I ask you to wrap up?
Yes.
I didn't introduce this, but we're going to try to limit comments to 5
Okay,
minutes.
how much more time do I have?
Minus 30 seconds.
Okay, that's fine with me. Well, all right. Now, in the last public session meeting, I remember the developer said that there was 2 reasons why they need a density variance. Anything less than 135 units is not profitable for the developer, and the cost of the land was very expensive. I recall my economics 101 class at RIT. The professor would teach this lesson. If the business plan is not cost effective and unprofitable, then it is a bad plan, so don't do it. In summary, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Natkus. I live at 170 Eaton Road. There has been some discussion here about the traffic problems, but nobody is speaking about Eaton Road. Eaton Road runs parallel to Pattonwood. It crosses between Thomas Avenue and St. Paul. With this development coming out where the site plan shows that they're going to have the entrances and exits, most of those people are going to try to avoid by going down Eaton Road. Eaton Road already is like an expressway. Many years ago, one of my neighbors put in to have a traffic sign as a stop sign that was put there to slow down the rate of the traffic. Unfortunately, we all know that a lot of people roll through. So there's a danger as well to pedestrians because we don't have sidewalks. We have a sidewalk partially on one side of the road, but Irondequoit isn't a neighborhood of streetlights for one, or, as I said, sidewalks. So I have a great concern about, the amount of traffic going in and out of the road. I mean, I hear traffic day and night at my house. And I don't think that I should have to keep my windows closed all the time so I wouldn't see that or hear that. With all 135 more families, I can't even imagine how many people that might end up being. You're increasing that noise level tremendously. So that's one of my concerns. And he said that they were willing to, tonight, to keep the value of the homes that were on Beacon View. Well, what about Eaton Road or any of the other roads? You really don't think that when people are constantly blocking it so you can't get out of your driveways or get to work on time or anything, that your property value isn't going to go down because people are just going to rush over there because they're going to want to live in an overcrowded area? So I want to know what you plan to do for myself if this doesn't, and how many years are you willing to look at this? And I do remember you saying that you were in a rush and that's why you couldn't get all these tests and stuff done because you had some sort of ecological thing that they were getting 12% for if they had it done in they had to put a driveway in by 2017. I do remember them saying that they had to have broken ground there. So what is actually going to happen? You're going to start digging underground in these spots? Are you going to then send this material off to a laboratory and wait to see if it's safe or if it's really contaminated? Because I do believe from what some of the other speakers said at the last meeting that ground has a lot of gases and things. And once you're disturbing them, they're going to come up. And as you said, the dust going everywhere on the river. What about the people in the boats? They're traveling up and down the river. Will that stop that from happening because they don't want to be polluted? I mean, there is a lot of things that we have to look at, not just, as you said, more revenue. I mean, I'm for change if they were to put in a small, modest thing, but they're all saying that they can't do that because of the cost of that. But I say, if you can't do it right by digging the whole thing out, I mean, can you tell me where somebody else has built a community on top of a landfill? And this has worked? I'd like to know where. Do we want to have another Love Canal? Thank you.
Good evening. Kelly Adam, 110 Beacon View Court. I'm a little quirky and I like to name my little speeches, and I'm calling this one Paved Paradise to put in a parking lot. I'm a little concerned with our developers being so go forward, go forward, go forward. This really needs to be thought out properly. We know there is a timeline for these developers, and we understand that their timeline is based basically on profit. If they don't get things done in a certain amount of time, they're not getting their grants. If they don't get things done in a certain amount of time, it's just probably not going to happen for them. My concern is I am not against change. I am against the long haul of what this could do to my neighborhood. I don't think that this property shouldn't be developed. It should be developed properly. It is private property. I have no right to say what Mr. Gilbert can or can't do with selling his property. But who he sells it to and what it can do to my community does concern me. I work for UPS. I drive around the city of Rochester. I've delivered every single street in the town of Arundecoit. This will be the biggest structure in the town of Arundecoit with the exception of Arundecoit Mall. That concerns me. And my house is right behind it, right beside it. The South Point project that they've spoke of, 3 stories tall. There's a contemporary apartment that's due to be built on University Avenue, 3 stories tall. Charlotte Street has a new development, 3 stories tall. Mount Hope and South Avenue, 3 stories tall. And they are all within the character of the neighborhoods they are being built. And none of them back up to residential single-story or 2-story family homes. So there's my other concern. The town really does need to keep within their zoning laws. These laws were here to protect the people that live here. Mr. Dietz has been here for 42 years. He's ready to sell and move because he doesn't have faith in our town that they will stay and protect us. The size of the units is just too big. And I appreciate the fact that you guys may try to give us a formal property value, but I want to know what cities are you comparing your waterfronts to? We are not Toronto. We are not Chicago. We are not Boca Raton, Florida. We are a little, small, summer community with residential people who like quiet. And if that's too much for you guys, I apologize. But that's what I bought my house for. I guess that's really all I have to say, and I hope that the town does consider really thinking about this. And if it has to be tabled, it's not about money here. It's money for them. It's not money for the town. It needs to be about the people that live here. Thank you.
My name is C.P. Maloney. I live at 17 Glen Cove Rise, which is in the Harbor Hill area. I am the president of the Harbor Hill Homeowners Association. I am not addressing this board tonight regarding that situation. I'm strictly a private citizen tonight. Okay? Mr. Chairman Wainert and board members, I still have a couple of questions regarding this development as it is proposed here. First of all, I see, and I talked about this before, regarding the city docks. It looks like now on this plan there may be some impingement upon that. Is the developer planning on buying the somehow leasing that property from the city so that he would be able to take over the dockage from Mr. Gilbert? I understand that the property would be sold by Mr. Gilbert. That property would not be impinged upon because it's City of Rochester property, but would he take over the lease that Mr. Gilbert has? 2, regarding the traffic on Thomas Avenue, I was asking also, could they still be considered going underneath the bridge to put the traffic out onto the Marina Drive where there is already a stoplight. The reason I ask this is because I think if they were to take it out there, there would be less of a concern regarding the traffic on Thomas Avenue. You may have people going to Greece or to Webster. They would be going up in a different area than the Thomas Avenue one. Because of the Monroe County DOT, was that what the I believe, Chairman Wainer, you were referring to the DOT, Monroe County. Was that regarding the bridge, underneath the bridge? I'm not sure if that was all part of that.
Technically, we haven't, well, we're part of the site plan review process, but we're not actively, we haven't even been designated as lead agent for the purposes of doing seeker yet. So everything that everyone is referring to, well, this is actually a bit of a preamble to the opportunities that people are going to have continuing to review this process. So most projects would have even less time potentially to review than this. So this is actually a pretty long time, and you're actually now kind of even speaking in advance of our opportunities to speak further on this.
Okay, I follow you on that. There was
absolutely will be a consideration, which a traffic analysis will be provided by the applicant, be reviewed by the town engineer, and additionally by the the Monroe County DOT, and all of those parties will have impact on the traffic and part of this. But I think as you're referring to access out of the rest of the site, right now the project is completely within the town of Arundecoit, and the parcels that are within the city of Rochester are not part of this project. Now, some of those, I believe, are owned by Mr. Gilbert and then are going to be perhaps transferred to this applicant, but that's not part of our project right now and might be part of a future development. But
okay, I'd like the town planning board to address that with the developer in the future. Is he going to take over that lease from Mr. Gilbert with the city of Rochester?
I don't think the boat docks, correct me if I'm wrong, are part of this deal at this point. That is completely a separate deal that the Gilbert has with the city. And even if they looked at future development in the city-owned parcels, I don't know that that is necessarily completely, unequivocally part of any future development.
All right.
Mr. Knopf?
That's correct.
Possible, but not.
Yeah, I mean, we told you, we told you all along, we've had discussions with the city about acquiring that property, but we have no
right.
We have no contract, we have no right to do it, so we decided to go ahead with the development totally contained.
Mr. Gilbert owns some of the land that's in the city of Rochester that's adjacent to this property, and then adjacent to the river is land owned by the city of Rochester, which no one has control of other than the lease that I believe Mr. Gilbert has.
Other than the city of Rochester.
Right.
That's correct. And even north of the bridge, I believe most of his docks north of the bridge up to his lagoon are owned by the city.
I mean, as I understand it, both sides of the river are owned by the city as well as the state.
That's correct.
Portions of it. So there's areas that are adjacent to the river that no one has control of other than governmental agencies.
Other than the city of Rochester. Okay. I just was wondering if the developer was planning on trying to access the city property through a lease through the city. The other thing is this EPOD, his cleanup of the Brown area. Why can't we have the developer clean up the whole site? He did explain that this is not as dangerous as it was, say, north of the bridge in the Shumway property or east of Stutson Plaza, where there's another landfill in there. I was wondering why they can't be asked to clean up the entire area instead of just where they want to dig. As I recall, that is not going down this deep as the property is over in Shumway's area or near where Wisteria is.
I mean, you're asking them to clean up other people's property?
No, strictly their property. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. I want only their property to be, everything on their property to be cleaned up. That would be something.
Remediation is, I don't know, there's probably definitions of all that stuff that you can address when I've digressed into your conversation too much, so I'm sorry. So, I mean, I'll let Alan address what remediation and definition of cleanup is.
And the last part is two parts, really. The housing that I see, it looks as though he's got a a parking lot underneath the housing. We have a building in the city of Rochester on State Street that is on piling. It was actually designed by a guy from California. They found out that the first two, not the first one, but the first two floors are almost very impossible to heat. And most of the time, those are really, really cold. Have they thought about the design aspect of that building also? And the third thing is that he's talking about the pavement being a semi-permeable membrane type of thing. Usually, when you develop a wall, those walls usually have drainage tiles on them, and those drainage tiles will fill in with silt and sand, etc., even wrapping it with a geotextile. Has the developer also thought of trying to make sure that the road does not become impregnated so much with runoff that it fills up? Those would be my questions for the developer.
Thank you.
Anything of me?
No.
Thanks, Mr.
Sorry I
Chairman.
interjected so much, perhaps.
Hi, my name is Steve Peck. I live at 200 Beacon View Court. And I was sitting back there and wasn't going to talk, but I have been involved in environmental liability claims, and they are messy. And the question up here from someone was, will the town of Arundecoit be involved in any claim? The answer is yes. And if you just want to look at social awareness for environments, you have Flint, Michigan to look at right now. Everybody said everything was perfect, until everything broke loose. And the second thing is, once people know that it's a landfill and it has lead in it, groups are going to go down there and at some point claim that they were affected by the lead at the site. And it's something you really should think about. It happens all over the country, and that's how the lead in houses first started. You know, although no matter what house it was and what was done to it, it still has lead, and suits are still being filed. So, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dorothy Broach. I live at 70 Beacon View Court. And it's hard to be up here and not say again what other people have said. And I know you've asked before that if we could just skip over that, that
You're
would
free
be
to
good.
say what you like.
What?
You're free to say what you like.
No, I'm just saying that we all seem to have the same concerns. And I'm afraid that if I don't come up and speak, you're not going to know that I'm not for the project. So I'm not. I appreciate Chuck Dietz and all that he said. He pretty much read all my notes. I don't know how he did that, but he did. So one of my questions is, if you're going to put a 2-foot cover in this project, is that going to raise the property buildings up higher that you've just then said you had docked it down a level or somewhat? If there's going to be a long project, is there going to be monies put in escrow to cover the length of time this project's going to take in case they do get deeply involved in it and then they find enough issues that they're not going to go further into this project? They're going to stop and they'll leave the rest of the land the way it is? And talking about leaving the land the way it is, if I remember right, when asbestos became such an issue with building, at least in our church, when we wanted to change the ceiling, we were told that if we don't touch the ceiling, everything will be okay. And I kind of feel the same way about this ground. If you don't touch it, maybe it'll be okay. Having said that, I can hear tractors going down there all the time, that Mr. Gilbert is constantly moving things around down there. And I wondered if it's possible for the DEC to come here to be a part of this forum for us to talk and ask questions too. I think that's all I have to say, and I appreciate the time that you take to listen to each and every one of us, even though if we are saying the same thing over and over again.
Hi, my name is John Colon. I live at 930 Thomas Avenue. I'm kind of right across the street from where all this stuff is happening. Especially, I guess, the access road coming in. So, I mean, I just felt I'd be remiss if I didn't come up here and say, so far, I mean, I haven't heard much, or I don't know much about the plan, but from what I've heard tonight, if it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right. So I just wanted to, you know, make sure that that you heard my voice and you know, have my vote, I guess, against this project. So that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Harrington. I live at 90 Beacon View Court, and this could get booed by a few people, but I think the project looks great. I actually would love to live there. I'm not a millennial, nor am I a senior citizen, but I wouldn't want to live there next to the bridge, and I think it's a very poor idea to put it there. I'm not here to talk about traffic concerns. We all know what that's going to be like on Thomas Ave. I'm not here to talk about environmental concerns because those seemingly have been covered. But I think it's very important to point out the disconnect that this project is. The plan's great, okay? The buildings look great. But high end there, I don't think is a good idea. And I don't think this has been brought up. High end, okay? Wealthy people, I'm certainly not high end. Don't disagree with me, Chuck. What can I do if I live there if I'm high end? I could walk across the bridge. I could go to E-Lab and buy a bong, okay? I could get a tattoo. I could get a really good cheeseburger at Windjammers. Cheeseburgers are great. The wings are too. Maybe an ice cream cone. I love the plaza where Harriman's is. I think it's great. I wouldn't call it high end. Again, I'm not a millennial. I'm not a senior citizen. And I'm certainly not high end. And I'm proud of Irondequoit. But let's consider the disconnect here for high end, okay? While I agree that there needs to be senior citizen housing in Irondequoit, there's a lot of space available for it, okay? We want the tax revenue base expanded. Nobody here is against that. We want to see the town grow. We want to see the town improve. But the disconnect with the high end housing and what's really available to walk to there, unless you're walking to the Rochester Yacht Club, maybe the Genesee Yacht Club, isn't really high-end, okay? Finally, 117 voices of dissent should not be looked down upon and not heard. Not that you're doing that. They should be listened to most of all. And while we might not be entitled to our view on Beacon View Court, okay, to the river, the boats, the birds, or whatever, we should not be subjected to the view of the back of an enormous building like this one. Like I said, love to live in it, not the right place. Thank you.
My name is Brian Lamondola. I have property at 977 Thomas Avenue. I spoke about this once before. I just wanted to add to some of the things that were presented by the developer today. It mostly pertained to the Beacon View Court area where they're lowering a tower below a tree line, camouflage paint, and insurance for property value. My house is right here. Camouflage paint is not going to stop the view of a back of a 4-story building for me. Traffic, we all know I can't even turn left out of the driveway now before they even build anything there. I have to go right go down Eaton Road and then come back around when the bridge is moving. That's how bad it is right now, before they even build. Chemicals, contaminants, all that. I'm all for developing, but that does not meet the fabric of this town. Thank you.
I just noticed the comments are starting to wane a bit, but remember that we're not going to close public input, so there's going to be additional opportunities to speak in regards to this application, but is there anyone else? Okay. This time, maybe the applicant would like to address some of the comments, and then...
Sure. Again, I go back to the town's plans and all. The town had, for a long time, has called for this sort of development on a brownfield, certainly in Nakaput single-family homes. This is, I think it will be great for the community. We don't utilize our port area like other cities do, and I really think it would be great for Rundequoit and for our area. Somebody brought up, oh, they haven't seen a similar development. Well, South Point Cove, it's 3 stories on top of the podium parking on top of a landfill. Same sort of very similar type development, and that is working successfully. As far as the part, we do have a detailed traffic study from SRF, one of the leading traffic engineering companies, that say they're really this is not going to cause any problems, and we haven't seen anything to the contrary. As we indicated, certainly we're amenable to also allowing access under the bridge through Marina Drive as an alternative, but we think most people will go out to Thomas Avenue. As far as the, reference to Flint, Michigan, or whatever, the problem in Flint, Michigan was the government didn't act. Here, we want the government to act to help us address the environmental problem, not sweep it under the carpet. We're going to do the responsible thing here in accordance with what the DEC, what the DEC will require. There were some questions about the technical aspects that Pete Van Schondorf would address.
I've written some notes about what's been asked, and if I fail to get all of them, just let me know. I guess the easiest way to hopefully convey some more information about the air monitoring and the dust and the gases to explain is the design of the project, the design of the remediation is not strictly about engineering, about how deep to dig this and how tall to pour that cement or whatever. There's also a health and safety component, and also what they refer to as a community air monitoring component. Health and safety not only addresses the individuals that are working on the project, but also the people that come to visit, the people that are in the surrounding neighborhoods. Briefly, the health and safety plan looks at all the different hazards, whether it's a chemical hazard or a physical hazard, meaning truck traffic on the site, or heavy equipment traffic, or what we refer to as slip, trip, and fall hazards. It's very detailed. It looks at all the different eventualities. And a part of that is air monitoring. There is going to be particulate monitoring at the site, not only for workers, but also around the perimeter of the property. And that will be set up based on the direction of the wind that day. If need be, it changes as the wind changes that day. So there will be more than 2, more than 1. There will probably be 3 or 4 for this size project to be monitored at any given time. And what's monitored at these air monitoring stations is the amount of dust that is in the air. There is a guideline, and it's just a guideline on what's acceptable. We measure the upwind air, measure the particulates in the air, and we measure the downwinds. If that downwind exceeds, I think, 150 micrograms per cubic meter of dust greater than the upwind, we have to do something about it. Whether that's spreading water, whether that's stopping the project, covering soil, using foam blankets, whatever, we have to do it. And the health and safety plan and air monitoring plan will have those types of triggers and those types of solutions. If those solutions don't work, we stop work and we figure out a better mousetrap. As far as the volatile organics, the gases that may come out of the ground from the contaminants, those too are monitored. There is going to be a third-party engineer monitoring the excavations, monitoring the soil that comes in and out of the property for organic gases. Again, there's going to be a threshold that has to be triggered before some action is going to be taken. The trigger, again, is very small. I believe it's maybe 5 parts per million in the air. But again, multiple locations, site perimeter are all going to be monitored. As far as migration of dust, there will probably be in the plan that if there is an exceedance at the property line, whether it's volatiles or dust, we'll go into the neighborhood and monitor those conditions. But foremost, we go back to the project and stop that activity. We try to find a solution to stop the migration of dust.
Who's doing that monitoring?
It's a third-party engineer that the developer has to hire.
Not your firm, not the DEC, and someone else.
It could be our firm, it could be somebody else. DEC and Department of Health, both Monroe County and the state, have the prerogative to come out and ask us for those records. Look at the records, look at how we're doing things, and they have the ability to stop work if they don't see what we're doing, if they don't like what we're doing. So there are multiple safeguards for the community and for the workers. Let's see, what else? The contaminated gas, there is a great concern in the community about this. There are certain guidelines that we look at, the contaminant concentrations in the soil, the contaminant concentrations in the groundwater. What concentrations are we seeing? Do they exceed those thresholds that you might reasonably anticipate that a gas would be formed? That could be a concern. And from a concern, that's a health and safety concern. Over time, like Alan and I have said, under hard surfaces that are relatively impermeable, these things can collect, and that's why we use best engineering practices in the design of the building to alleviate those things. There was a concern about trucks and whether they're going to be spreading dust and dirt on the roadway. Again, part of the engineering plan or the construction plan will be most likely to have a gravel run out to keep the dust off. The town may even impose a requirement to have the dust clean or the road surfaces clean periodically during the day. But as far as the site environmental work, there will be a truck wash, so no contamination is left or can leave with a truck. So hopefully that'll address that thing, that question. As far as guidelines for the remediation, the state has guidelines, which in Alan might be better to address, but the general rule of thumb is the state guidelines are equal to or more restrictive than the federal guidelines. So as we address the state guidelines, we are in fact addressing EPA, the federal EPA's guidelines. Why aren't we cleaning up the whole site? Again, as part of the remedial alternative analysis, we look at various scenarios on how best to deal with the contamination that we've got. Is the contamination migrating off-site, either airborne, erosion, sedimentation, or is it affecting groundwater? In our cases, we have stated that the ground surface meets the residential criteria for these restricted residential projects, these apartment-type projects. So we're pretty confident that the ground surface meets that requirement. We looked at the groundwater. The only groundwater contamination that we're seeing is from naturally occurring metals. We're looking at iron, magnesium, sodium, those types of things. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, our upgradient wells, those that are along Thomas Avenue, have similar concentrations as we do have down by the river. So there's no clear-cut explanation or finger pointing, if you will. Is the site creating this problem? It could be naturally occurring from the sediment, the soils, the bedrock that's upstream or up gradient of the project. So the state has not required us to look at a cleanup of that. We have addressed it in our remediation plan, or excuse me, in our alternatives analysis, especially from the viewpoint if we do have deep excavations that require dewatering, what's going to happen to that water? So we are addressing groundwater, even though it's unclear that the site is responsible for the impacts that we are seeing. I guess the one other point maybe is someone raised a concern about the lead in soil. That is a concern if you were exposed to it. That's maybe the key point of the whole exercise of the remedial alternatives analysis. What are the receptors of that exposure? If the lead is buried in the soil, there's no exposure to anybody walking across it. There's no increase in the groundwater that we've seen. So is there a need to remove that lead that's buried already? Again, it's another part of the analysis that we look at. And it's something that DEC addresses. I mean, if they see that we're not addressing it fully or completely, they, like, again, was pointed out, they've rejected it and brought it back to us to look at. You know, it's part of the process. The comment was made that there have been significant changes asked for. I guess if maybe I'm a little jaded, I didn't think the comments were that bad. But needless to say, we have to address them. If in the next go around they see other questions, we have to address them. It's part of the process. Any questions that I need to explain more or I have forgotten?
Just address that rejection and significance thing again, maybe, if you will.
Well, if I could just, we've been trying to get comments, as I told you, out of DEC from a report we submitted in December 2014 as a draft, fully anticipating and expecting comments. In fact, our firm does these types of brownfield cleanups all over the state. I've never seen a report submitted to the DEC where they didn't come back with comments and ask changes. I've never seen it happen. that's just what happens. And you want their input. It's a back and forth. So you come forward the proposal, they have a point of view and experience, they come back and say, hey, why don't you do this, why don't you look at this, whatever. In fact, our remedial alternatives, we told them it was a draft. What do you think about this? And they came back, and really the only significant point was we thought we had, the testing showed the top 2 feet was clean, that really the problem was in the subsurface. They came back and said, well, really, you did do all the testing we asked for, but we really need more testing if you want to rely on the top 2 feet, or you're going to have to cover it, the whole site. So we elected to say, well, let's go on the safe side. Unless we can come up with the additional testing, we'll cover the site. So that's what we're doing. So
What are you doing with all that tires and junk that Gilbert said was in the trees that weren't a wood lot and all that stuff? They were in the roots, and there were tires and rims and washing machines and refrigerators and.
Well, to the extent when we're grading and all, we hit material like that, depending upon if it's putrescible, it's decomposed like garbage, it would have to go off-site. If it's, and probably tires would have to go off-site. If it's like a piece of concrete, we can bury it and leave it on the site. It really depends on what the material is, and then we would cover it over. So, but I think like tires probably would have to go off-site.
I think part of what he testified was that it wasn't a wood lot because there was all this garbage in the trees. So that is part of the top 2 feet, because the photos showed that we were.
Yeah. Well, it is all fill. It's not virgin land.
Right.
It wasn't really land. It was, it was mush.
It was swamp, and then they filled it. They built a wall along the river, and then they filled everything on the other side.
Right. Exactly. So, and anyway, so it basically it's par for the course. The DEC comes back with the comments. We go back and forth, and we're resubmitting a plan that hopefully they'll be satisfied with, and then there will be a public comment on the before they make their decision, and they don't have to, but they sometimes will. They probably will in this case. But hold.
What would you have said was the
hearing.
most significant issue that they wanted additional information on?
What I just described, that they did not think that we had enough comprehensive testing to fully document that the top 2 feet met the restricted residential standards. So basically, it was either do the more testing that, I can't tell you that ever, I frankly think if we test every square foot, we're probably going to find something somewhere. I'd be surprised if we don't find, we had some exceedances, but most of our exceedances were the subsurface, not the very surface. But I'm sure if if you tested every square foot of it, you'd find something. And so we just thought it made the most sense to, rather than to say, okay, we'll put the cap on, and that's probably the safer way to go anyways, so that there's more protection.
Maybe this is better for a later time, but you're talking about putting the cap on, but you're also talking about 2 feet of soil that's already existing there is clean. Is that inherently what you're relying on as being the cap?
That was our original proposal. And they came back and said, no, you've got to cover it, or.
So you're going to cover the cap that, in essence, somebody put 2 feet of a cap on there, if you will. And you're going to cover it with 2 more feet.
Well, not where the building is, not where the parking lots are. So about, I forgot what our percentage is, but.
But the parking's not going to be here, and then the grass next to it's 2 feet high. You're going to bring the parking lot up.
Right. And we're going to regrade. We're going to be grading. So,
All right. I get it now. I get it. Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was a question about federal funding. There's
just a second. I think what they're saying is that there's the areas where there's a building or there's a impervious surface doesn't need a cap. The areas where that acts as a
that is the cap.
That is the cap.
And then if there's an area that's not, it's either impervious or it's just impervious in any way, there'll be 2 feet of cap there. Is that what you're saying? fresh feet of new soil.
Yeah, if it's not soil, excuse me, if it's not pavement or building slab, it'll be 2 feet of new dirt.
And in reality, looking at what plan we have, we're talking about the areas inside curbs, the flower box areas, things like that, because you're building on a very big portion of the property.
Correct. You know,
You're not going to have 2-foot berms at every curb. I mean, it's going to be,
John, you,
No.
maybe John, who's our.
No, because there's already going to be
right.
rock and,
Is this a balanced site? I mean, what's the cuts and fills? in
Well, there
this?
will be some dirt leaving site, there will be some fill brought in, so in a situation where you're talking about a 2-foot jogging grade between the pavement and the grass next to it, there'll be an overdig for the pavement. So we're gonna overdig that area, put our stone in that's required, and the grading is it's gonna be just as we grade a normal site. But we'll account for that 2 foot of fill.
Right.
So our finished grades are gonna be as they are normally, but if there's an area where the contaminants are, we'll have to account for 2 foot of clean fill in those areas.
So you're going to cut it and put it back?
Correct.
so the net amount that the building's going to be above what it is now it's
Gonna stay the same.
It's going to stay the same.
Yep.
So it's not going to be 2 feet higher everywhere.
No.
No,
All right.
no. Did all that. I guess while I'm up here, if I can make a couple points, I just want to point out a little bit about the process. And my firm's been working on this for 15 months now, and we're the project engineers. My job is to prepare a site plan, a grading, utility plan, a landscape plan that we're submitting to another firm to handle, and make sure that the plan conforms to the town standards. And since this time, we've been working on this together. We've had workshops, we've had public hearings. To your comment, we've had neighbors out to give them an informal look at the property. And I think this is the third meeting I've taken over 7 pages of notes. And there's not anything on here that I could take back to my drawing table and change my plan. So as someone quoted me back on the 28th of March, give me more input, I think that this board should explain, or maybe Carrie or someone from the town can explain. All I'm getting is we don't want the project, which I understand. But there's nothing pertaining to my plan to help the neighbors. I'm not getting input to landscaping, buffering, things like that. That's what I referred to back on the 28th. I'm still here tonight asking for that input. I understand that people don't want this here, but we're not asking for a rezoning. We're not asking for a use variance. And I think that it'd be important for someone from the town to explain to the public why we're here. I think that we're all adults here, and we know that we're probably not going to stop. We're going to keep moving forward. And so the secret process, we're right where we want to be. It's been a pleasure working with the board. We continue to work with it, and we're not pushing timelines or anything like that. We understand this is a long, arduous process, and I, for one, am looking to give you more information, not hold it back.
I do think that we're generally, in reference to the seeker process at this point, which it's kind of gotten entangled a little bit with this environmental cleanup.
Yep.
And I do think the site plan review process is the next stage where we hopefully you'll get some more meaningful input. But I do think this board has been pretty consistent that we still feel density is an issue, traffic is an issue, and buffering is an issue. And I mean, there's going to have to be some accommodations, speaking for myself, for me to approve this to those aspects.
I understand that. I'm more pertaining towards, and I understand your comments, and we take those comments wholeheartedly, but I'm understanding the comments from the public and opinions that we're not listening to them and things like that. We're moving forward to what the zoning allows. And we still want to listen to them, but I'm looking for more information from them.
What you're saying is that the public has the ability to influence the site design as well as more so than yes or no.
Correct.
As to whether this is allowed.
Yep. So, understand.
Perhaps more so.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. I think, so, I don't know if, unless the board needs anything else, we're going to be submitting the landscape plan. Hopefully, we'll have the revised remedial alternatives analysis and the revised remedial investigation report to the board, and we'll go back and talk to our architect and hopefully have him
I know
here.
that's what we've been dwelling on quite a bit, but like I said before, I think, kind of that DEC aspect is really the governing of that whole cleanup, but all of these other things that are part of the environmental assessment are really the things that we kind of not talked about,
Right.
that are probably the most important right now for, the planning review and to some of what John was talking about. So, we've kind of dwelled on one aspect significantly, but the other aspects I think are equally or perhaps
Well-
more so important for the planning board review at this point.
I'm a chemical engineer, and you start throwing fluoros and chloros and benzos and everything else at me.
And I'm not
That's all
diminishing
I'm-
what you're.
That's all
I know. I'm not diminishing your, but what I'm saying is we've just overwhelmed one aspect of it when there's all these other aspects that we need to deal with too.
What I'm saying is, though, is if I saw what I saw in the plan is, and that's what I'm most concerned about right now, is because I don't see the other side of it, which is the remediation. And I know it's the DEC's responsibility, but it's also, I think, my responsibility to make sure going forward that that everything's in place. So, if
I'm not diminishing your opinion nor that aspect. What I'm saying is that we still leave, there's one aspect and there's 11, 10 others that we need to deal
okay,
with.
so what else do we need to? What else do I mean? We're still we've gotten a traffic study, and like every other traffic study we've ever gotten, it's not going to have an impact on traffic. It always amazes me that it may not have a significant impact, I think is what we want to say.
Yeah, that's what it said. It wouldn't have a significant impact. It said it
And
would
we're
have
asking
no
Labella
impact.
to look at that, and the Monroe County Department is going to look at it. So all of that is going to get vetted with them and reviewed, and Michael and his firm will give us their opinion and their input.
Right. Okay.
And one thing that was brought up, and there's no way that we can have a connector under the bridge at this point
I think there is.
with the lands that you control.
Right. I mean, we think that there is a public right of way through there, and we indicated, that we would. I mean, so I'll go back and try to clarify that. But
I think that's something that would
we believe
be-
that right now the public it's
I
a
think
public
that'd be
right of way.
I think that'd be something that would be significant as part of our review and our understanding if that's something that could be accomplished as part of this project.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to know that it could or it couldn't, if it can't or it can,
Well, I guess that just brings into question the lands outside of the town of Arundequoit. Because as you are aware, back a year ago, we had a plan that encompassed both city property and Arundequoit property, and we had a holistic project. So it basically
Well-
revisiting that.
As we understand it, the city of Rochester's writing the town of Arundequoit some kind of a letter right now. We don't know what they're going to say, but I doubt that it's not that they're going to want to be not involved.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
well,
might have an opportunity for them to be at the table to discuss these aspects.
But I do. I mean, the traffic's going to could go through the city of Rochester. I mean, it's not that we can't, even though we're not developing in the city of Rochester. If there's an existing right of way, and we'll clarify that with the city.
Right.
I guess we'll
Well, that's
try
what I'm
to
saying.
get a
If you need some
definitive.
clarity and they can't get their ear, it sounds like they might be at the table pretty soon. where
I
their
mean,
ear might be there.
Mr. Gilbert lives on Joy Lane, which is, you see on the maps as a road. So we'll clarify that whether that's possible or not.
Okay.
It's good. Okay.
All right.
But you understand what I'm saying about all the other environment, I mean, I think we kind of overwhelmed that side. We still need to look at
Right.
all of these, the view shed and impacts, all those things that we have only briefly talked about.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and people brought up I don't see the noise issue. I mean, I understand the view shed issue. We did give you the simulation. And again, our point there was and I know we got to give you the improved landscape plan, I
Well, I
understand.
think part of it too, the environmental impact is how does it fit into the River Harbor District and the proposal design guidelines
Right.
for that area?
Okay.
And I don't think that that's been addressed at all.
All right, all right, all right.
And a lighting plan.
Okay.
We need all that stuff, yeah.
All right.
I mean, now we kind of got through this preamble and we're going to get into the heavy work.
All right, we can do that. And and again, the property value protection for these properties and these properties, and we've.
You got to grab the portable mic, I'm sorry. You got good stuff there, I want to hear it. I can't hear very well.
We did indicate we would do the property value protection for the adjoining properties in here, and we've said all along, we're willing to buy any of these properties, so, for their fair value, so, otherwise, the properties are next to property that's zoned for multifamily use, so it's, it's been that way since 1999, so it should be no surprise, but we're happy to buy any of those properties for the fair value, so.
Right. All right, well, thank you for
All
coming
right, thank you
tonight.
very much, we appreciate it.
See you next month.
Yep.
Nothing really an offer versus from the neighborhood.
I guess address the podium, please. No more though, that gray area.
Sue
here.
McKenna, 50 Beacon View Court. I would like to ask the developers if they would schedule a meeting with the neighbors because they have not approached us again since July, and they keep saying they don't know what we want. Set up another meeting with us. Send us a notice. We will sit down with them.
When do you want to meet? Next week?
I think Joe has my email.
Why don't we do this, you guys can do this out in the other room, because we have other applicants that are here.
Right.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is case number PB 1604-3. Upon the matter of request by Costage Engineering, acting as agent for Morgan Depot Plaza, LLC, for preliminary final site plan approval for renovations of existing plaza building to include a drive-through freestanding remote teller ATM and associated site improvements on premises 999 East Ridge Road, the Depot Plaza in an M manufacturing district.
Could everyone just be as quiet as possible while they leave, please? Thank you. It slides up underneath there. If you, it's got. Is there too many papers there?
Hey, Michelle, can you give me a hand with that, or I think you can just pick that whole thing up.
I think he's got a foam board there. That's why it's not.
We got the drawing right here, too. You want to use this one?
I see what you're saying.
Easier.
No, wait, Peter. We have the same thing right here.
Jace, he just wants to be helpful.
I don't think anybody cares.
Where'd you get a color, Bill?
It's right here, I think.
So many papers, everything's hidden.
Glad Michelle was here.
Michelle was glad she's here, too.
Good evening, Alex Amering, Costage Engineering on behalf of Morgan Depot LLC. We're here for a preliminary final site plan application for relocating the M&T facility, incorporating it into the existing plaza in addition to adding a remote kiosk at the western portion of the site. If you recall, back in the fall, we were before this board for the Panera Bread project, which is currently where M&T is today. Since that time, the owner of the plaza has been working proactively with M&T to relocate them within the plaza. The site plan that's before you is ultimately a result of those negotiations. So the operations, kiosk itself, there will be 3 lanes. 2 of them will be a single teller, remote teller, and the third will be a combination ATM teller. Essentially, all the infrastructure was constructed throughout previous phases of Depot Plaza, going back to Tops and then the Sonic facility, and even more during the Panera Bread project. Through the installation of these kiosks, there will actually be a reduction in impervious area by about 8,000 square feet. There is landscape buffering. If you look back from the original Tops approval, the pavement actually went all the way to the western property line. This includes landscape buffering from that adjacent property. The lighting for the kiosk, it does have integral LED lights to meet the ATM Safety Act. There's specific requirements as far as the radiuses and foot candles for that. It will essentially supplement the existing lighting in the plaza, which is generally in conformance with what you would use in a plaza, 1 to 2 foot candles.
around the area of the kiosk, there will be 5-foot candles, again, to meet the requirements of the ATM Safety Act. Aside from that, we'll be putting in some curbed islands. The only utility, there was one correction to the EAF is brought up during the engineer's letter. The only utility will be electric. There will be a vacuum tube system, as is commonly used with banks, that they can use from the facility in the plaza to the kiosk for the transactions there. It's essentially the same operation as you see in the facility today. It's just the drive-through portion is now separated from the building itself.
So you're going to trench across the entire parking lot?
Yeah, it'll be a small trench just for, typical electrical conduit and
Under the sidewalk and then?
We're looking at the routing right now, working with the M&T folks and where they're gonna connect to in the plaza. We're gonna obviously try to pick a route which avoids, accessible parking, sidewalks, all that. So, it's less cost to obviously the development.
Ultimately, you got to go into the sidewalk at the building, though, correct? Or
yeah, probably. They'll be unavoidable. That will be a, typical restoration, seal coat, restripe as necessary, and we can.
Can you talk a little bit? It seems like you're improving access by pedestrians from Carter Street as well as through bus access. Maybe just.
Yeah, what you'll notice is some of this, the site plan reflected. So the site plan reflected today has actually been constructed. All this buffering and landscape was done through the owner's coordination actually with the University of Rochester and review by RGRTA. There is a bus pad out there. There is an access point that comes down to the west side of the building where the U of R is. So some of that is in place today. Essentially what would need to be created would be some saw cuts in the pavement and this island here. The drainage infrastructure's in there, the pavement's in there, the landscape's in there.
The last time we were shown the kiosks that they seemed like they just had a little cantilevered covering over them. Is that the way that they are being proposed, or is there a large roof over the top of this, or what's it?
I have here, this is actually a good example, and you can see how the renderings look in real life. This is a facility in Henrietta. It's the same exact. That's the combination ATM remote teller, which is the bigger of the two. We'll have one of those, and then the dedicated remote teller is a smaller, similar architectural style, but smaller pad. It's only 2 by 5 feet. That's approximately 4 by 10 feet. So we'll have one of those and 2 of the smaller ones for the total three lanes.
And the only site lighting you're adding is that associated with the kiosks at this point?
Yep. Again, a comment generated by the town engineers was regarding preparing a lighting plan. We've taken the IES files from the manufacturer that they use in these kiosks. We've modeled that. Again, providing 5-foot candles at 5 feet, 2-foot candles at 30 feet, and 1-foot candle at 60 feet, which is the ATM Requirement Act for safety. So,
is that the anything else would like to add?
I think I'm all set.
All right. Jay, anything?
Just, Mr. Chairman, this trench that's going to be cut, it says electric and telephone. I assume that's also going to be vacuum tube?
Yep.
And it's going to be underground the whole way. It's going to go from there all underground.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be much different than when you do site lighting for the poles and they run conduit. It's not going to be a big shoring design for, a 12-foot deep sanitary sewer. It's fairly common.
Just going to do a ditch witch or whatever you call it, right?
Yeah, and well, we can work with the contractors and the tenants in the plaza to make sure, we're maintaining those accessible parking spaces and all that stuff, and, rerouting people around sidewalks with, safety features as necessary, so.
How long do you think it's going to take to do this? Is it a week or 2 weeks or?
I would guess a couple weeks, but that would probably be more focused on the installation of the kiosks themselves and the hookups, the curb work associated around them.
You're saying the whole project 2 weeks, not just the trench?
I would guess a few weeks, I'm not the guy building them, so, the trench they can do before, they could potentially do after. There's some, they can coordinate that from a scheduling standpoint, so.
That's all I have,
Jay,
Mr.
anything
Chairman.
else?
That's it.
Richard?
Nothing.
Kimmy?
Just a quick question about the walkway that goes from the bus stop and then it goes on the west side of the ATMs and everything. We talked a little bit about snow removal before. We're going to have to pattern that a little differently in the
Yeah,
plaza.
someone had mentioned that they're currently using that area. From a drainage standpoint, the north end of that main parking field that goes along the drive aisle is a logical place because that's the low point of the site. All the storm sewers are there. With the exception of this space, I think they have the rest filled out or they're getting there, and, parking hasn't been an issue, and if it is, they'll truck snow where they have to, so.
And has the paved walkway already been completely created?
Yep.
Okay. So obviously you'll be sensitive to making sure that that's cleared along with those drive aisles. Thanks.
Michael?
No, thank you.
Mary?
The only thing I want to say is I'd be willing to bet they're going to use a mold to put that stuff in order to get a vacuum.
Use a what?
A mold. They just go under.
Potentially. It's a long distance. If it was under a road or something, I could, inquire as to that, but I would think that they would probably open cut it.
Other than that, very good.
Alan?
I got a few.
Sure.
On the plan that we were presented with at the workshop showed a green space just northwest of this. The plan that I'm looking at today that's date stamped today does not reflect the same green space. Has that been eliminated?
Guess I want to make sure I wasn't at the workshop.
Right
I
where you
apologize.
turn in.
You talking about that bullnose that you drive around?
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of colorization. I think the black and white that you're looking at is been provided today to show the markings on the pavement with the arrows and location of a sign and where.
That was is it still green space?
Yes. I believe so.
All right, and we also, I looked more like a bus shelter to me on that spot as opposed to a concrete pad that is being proposed today.
I think the agreement was the owner would provide the pad, and at the time that our GRTA had the funds, they would supply the shelter, and I'd have to confirm that, but I don't believe the responsibility is on the owner to provide the shelter, so.
Okay, the snow removal from the site itself, where's that going? I mean, those lanes are going to get snow in them.
Yeah, jumping back and forth. I was told that currently they're using this area. What they will use is the backs of these spaces now. They'll obviously have to leave the drive aisles open. From a storefront standpoint, all the accessible parking and, people are naturally going to park up there.
I guess I'm talking about the lanes that you would use for the tellers or for the vacuum tube. Because that's a fence or that's not their property. I mean, I see where that's already been paved in. I drove through it today.
That's on the applicant's property.
Okay. So the snow, where is that going to be pushed to? They're just going to
probably push it right through the drive-through, and similar as to how you'd make a movement. If you were using it, push it through the widths we design typically for those are allow for a typical plow truck. So.
And I know it's facing a commercial area because it's facing west.
What's the volume going to be like on those speakers? Because there's going to be a way to communicate back and forth, right?
Yeah, there is. I'm sure M&T's done study. This is, a trend that they're, going towards a lot of these. And, I know they put a lot of time into those studies. I don't have that information available right now, but.
But that's only at one location. The other two are ATM locations.
All three are tellers. One is an ATM combined teller.
Oh, they're all tellers.
All tellers. One has an ATM, the larger of the three. Yep.
And then finally, I know this isn't really your problem, but if you pull off of Carter Street into that plaza, the only place to go is into a crater. Are they going to take care of that?
Right on the drive aisle coming in?
Yeah.
I think this is the time of year they're looking at that, type of stuff like that, so I could inquire.
Okay.
One of the owners is here, he probably.
Yeah.
This is Angelo and Gracia.
Okay.
Angelo and Gracia. Well,
You know what I mean,
that,
right?
that probably broke down over the winter, so we'll make sure we'll take care of that. And as it relates to the snow, when we get too much snow on the site, then it gets trucked off, and we'll remove it. But this is an interesting site because that was an empty Kmart for 10 years, and we successfully demised that building in half, and we're able to fill it from both ends instead of like knocking the building down. And with the exception of 1,700 feet here and 6,000, we're filled. And adding Panera Bread is a huge, it's a huge attribute to that center. And it was to credit to M&T Bank in working with us to get it done. And hopefully we could finish it up with the approval of the teller tonight.
I know I've had the public asking me, when's Panera coming? So,
This is kind of the piece in the puzzle.
My daughter is asking.
Yeah,
I actually have people constantly, that's the one big question, when's Panera?
Yeah, it's the last piece.
I know it, yeah.
But it's been a difficult road because M&T wasn't really sure what they wanted to do. Either relocate off-site, go to an ATM. Those were the things and the conversations that went on for almost 6 months.
No, I actually think it was really genius what you did, if you will, cutting the building in half, and you really created a front on the back.
Yeah.
And
We call that the southern exposure. We don't call it the back.
I have a project right now where the basement, everyone wants to call it garden level, and I'm like that.
Yeah, fortunately, we had enough parking in the back to be able to afford us that design, and that's what we came up with.
Yeah.
And then we cleaned up the Carter Street entrance also.
Right.
By working with the neighbor to clean that up. So,
We appreciate the development there.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Grassi, I really appreciate the work that you've done in the town. I mean, the LA Fitness is fantastic, and this plaza is superb. I was there yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I'm staying away from Sonic. That place is evil, but I'll go to Panera.
Yeah, we do the best we can with it. We appreciate it. More to come too, though. So be
Great.
patient.
Great.
Okay. Thanks.
We shouldn't probably be laudatory before we give them their approval. Kind of showing our hand.
Well, I mean, it's well deserved. I mean, they've really done a nice job with getting that plaza where it is now. It was a real eyesore, and it's really picked up quite a bit.
Right.
It's raised. I hope it's raises everybody's game on Ridge Road.
Well, yes. I don't know, people always talk about how everything's bad in Irondequoit, but I think, when it started with LA Fitness and then it rolls over to McDonald's and your development here, I think that stretch, with the road improvements has just been markedly improved beyond.
Yep.
I wish people gave more credit for the improvements to that corridor than what is, now we have a Popeyes and a Dunkin' and a
Even that tire place that it's with Half Tire and
Coast or Mavis.
Mavis.
They really cleaned that up too.
I don't know which came first, but I give Angela credit because he's here. Angelo, because he's here. But
LA Fitness.
yes, LA Fitness I think was the progenitor of all that improvement up there, and I think it's awesome. So we have to do seeker.
Public hearing?
Oh,
Anybody?
anyone? Yes. No. You got us all. At this time, I'd like to open up to public input. Anyone wishing to speak in regards to this application may do so. Nobody? Seeing none, close the public input portion. Are there any other questions by the board of the applicant?
Chairman, with respect to seeker for PB.
I'll just, wait, I forgot, I'm getting all off my game here. So we do have the seeker evaluation that the staff has helped us put together, where we find that there's no or small impact may occur to the 11 major elements. As far as Part 3, the determination of significance, there's quite a long explanation as to why we see no impact on this, but I don't know if I need to read the entirety into the record, but this is a continuation of an existing site plan, basically, and I think we've vetted anything that we've heard here before, and obviously it's a commercial site.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask one question? On number 12, what's the archaeological sensitive area?
There's this thing called the, Circles and Squares map, and this happens to be on the Circles and Squares map, I believe, and it dinged a bell a while back that this is archaeological significance.
So New York State Historic Preservation Office maintains a map that shows historically sensitive areas, and there are large contiguous blobs all over the town of Arundequite that it causes the town to need to take a look at the potential for archaeological impacts. However, SHPO's standard of review is that in areas that have been largely already and long-term developed, that you don't really need to look at the archaeological potential impacts because
we kind
it's
of
been
dealt with them.
developed.
Sorry, we dealt with them when the first project came through, and this is for some reasons on that archaeological map. Although
I just wondered because I
So-
saw it checked off, and I
I think it's 'cause
Anytime
it was
it,
historically filled by when they did the roadway.
There's a
Potentially.
new mapper online that's supposed to help, and there's more questions you find out now, but.
Yeah.
I
Thank
guess
you.
the only question we would really have to ask then is, this trench is a relatively shallow trench. You're not going down 18 feet or anything like that.
They're not going down any further than anything that's already been disturbed, actually.
Right.
Now can I?
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Let's chop it a bit.
So, with respect to PB 1604-3, with respect to seeker, I move this is an unlisted action, negative declaration.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Favors or opposed say nay. So we're looking for preliminary and final site plan for approval.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that PB 1604-3, upon the matter of the request by Costage Engineering, acting as agent for Morgan Depot Plaza LLC for preliminary and final site plan approval for renovations of existing plaza building to include a drive-through facility and associated site improvements on premises 999 East Ridge Road, known as the Depot Plaza, in an M manufacturing district.
Second?
Approval.
And I would move approval, I'm sorry.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
That's it.
Thank you for investing in Arundequite.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And we really, really, really thank you.
More to come. And bye.
Thank you.
Come back again.
Soon.
Are we doing it in co-investment? No, it's tabled right now, but I thought we got a plan for it.
Are we, Carrie, is there anything to be done with coup?
So that tabled item, the town board had its public hearing for the special use permit.
Yeah.
Heard comments and has elected to, had not made a decision on the special use permit at the April meeting. So I know this board had wanted to make its decision contingent upon the town board's decision with respect to the special use permit. So there is no action at this time. Town board did not make a decision.
Is there any other matters before our board this evening?
For that last item, which is another item for action, would be related to the seeker determination for the ZBA application of 160 Densmore. The town engineer and town staff are still in the process of reviewing the application material that was provided for the purposes of seeker. And so we're not yet in that position to be able to provide the information to this board that you would need to be able to review the environmental impacts and make a determination, declare your lead agency and make a determination of significance.
So at this point, I'm looking for, I think, a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.